In the quiet hum of the world, amidst the relentless flow of traffic and the digital streams that never cease, does a part of you feel a deep, unspoken exhaustion? Have you ever felt as if you are running on an endless wheel, propelled by deadlines, expectations, and a constant, nagging sense of urgency, without ever truly knowing the destination? You might pause, in a rare moment of stillness, perhaps while looking at your own reflection, and ask a silent question. What is this all for? What is the genuine, lasting happiness that my heart is truly searching for? This feeling, this quiet ache of disconnection, is a silent epidemic of our modern age. We live in a world of unprecedented material abundance, yet we suffer from a poverty of the soul. The source of our deepest struggles is not a lack of things, but a profound inner turbulence. It is the anxiety born from clinging tightly to things that are destined to change: our careers, our relationships, our youth. It is the suffering woven from our desperate attachment to fleeting successes, to the approval of others, to a carefully constructed image of who we think we should be. We are trapped, not by physical walls, but by the prison of our own minds, a space crowded with relentless thoughts, with worries about a future that has not yet arrived, and regrets about a past that can no longer be changed. This inner state of deadlock, of constant, low-grade stress and anxiety, is the true source of our dis-ease. But what if there was another way? A path that does not demand you to run away from the world, but instead teaches you how to find a sanctuary of peace right in the heart of it all. What if the solution was not to change your external circumstances, but to begin a quiet revolution within yourself, a fundamental shift in the very way you see, think, and feel? This is the journey we are about to embark on together. It is an exploration of the timeless wisdom of Buddhist teachings, not as a distant, dogmatic religion, but as a profound science of the mind, a practical art of living. We will walk a path that illuminates the power of letting go, the grace of mindfulness, and the liberation of awakening, discovering that the peace we seek is not a destination to be reached, but a way of being, waiting to be uncovered within us, right here and right now. To begin our journey towards inner peace, we must first have the courage to look directly at the landscape of our own lives, with honesty and without judgment. The Buddha's first great teaching, the foundation upon which all others are built, begins with a simple yet profoundly radical statement: there is suffering, or in the ancient language of Pali, there is dukkha. Now, the word suffering can be misleading. It conjures images of great tragedy, of intense physical pain, or deep, agonizing grief. While dukkha certainly includes these things, its meaning is far more subtle, more pervasive, and more intimately familiar to every single one of us. Think of it less as suffering and more as a fundamental unsatisfactoriness, a subtle friction that exists between our desires and the reality of the world. It is that feeling of vague disappointment when a long-awaited vacation ends, or the low-level anxiety that hums beneath the surface of a busy workday. It is the feeling of, "Is this it?" that can arise even after achieving a major goal. It is the quiet restlessness of the mind, always seeking something more, something different, something better than what is present in this moment. Dukkha is the inherent instability of pleasure, the certainty that even the sweetest moments are fleeting, and the stress of trying to hold on to them. It is the discomfort of change, and the deep underlying truth of impermanence that touches everything we hold dear. This is where we can understand the powerful story of the second arrow. The Buddha taught that in life, we cannot avoid the first arrow. This arrow represents the inevitable pains and difficulties of existence: a sudden illness, the loss of a job, a harsh word from a friend, the simple fact of growing older. These things happen to everyone. They are part of the contract of being human. They are unavoidable arrows of pain. The real problem, the source of our deepest anguish, is the second arrow. This is the arrow that we shoot at ourselves. After being struck by the first arrow of a painful event, we react. We generate thoughts of, "Why me? This is unfair. I can't stand this." We fall into cycles of anger, self-pity, fear, and resentment. This reaction, this mental and emotional proliferation around the initial pain, is the second arrow. It is the arrow of suffering. The first arrow is the pain, which is often sharp but temporary. The second arrow is the story we tell ourselves about the pain, and this story can create a wound that lasts for weeks, months, or even a lifetime. Acknowledging dukkha is not an act of pessimism. It is an act of profound realism and compassion. It is like a doctor honestly diagnosing an illness. It is the first, essential step towards healing. It is looking at the second arrow, not the first, and realizing, this one I am doing to myself, and therefore this one I can learn to stop. Once we have bravely identified the symptom, the diagnosis continues with the second noble truth, identifying the cause, the origin of this pervasive unsatisfactoriness. The cause, the Buddha said, is tanha, which translates as thirst, craving, or attachment. This is the relentless engine within our minds that is always wanting, always grasping, always pushing away. It operates in three primary ways. First, there is the craving for sense pleasures, the thirst for beautiful sights, pleasant sounds, delicious tastes, and comfortable feelings. Our entire consumer culture is built on fueling this thirst, promising that the next purchase, the next experience, the next hit of dopamine will finally bring lasting satisfaction. Yet, like drinking salt water to quench thirst, it only makes the thirst stronger. The pleasure is fleeting, and we are soon left feeling empty, seeking the next fix. Second, there is the craving for existence, the deep desire to become something, to be someone, to secure our identity and leave a mark on the world. This is the thirst for fame, for power, for a perfect reputation, for a stable and unchanging self. We construct a fragile ego, a me that we must constantly defend and promote, leading to endless striving, comparison, and a deep-seated fear of failure and insignificance. The final form is the craving for non-existence, a subtler but equally potent force. This is the desire to annihilate what we don't like, to escape from painful feelings, difficult situations, or our own perceived flaws. It manifests as aversion, hatred, anger, and the desperate wish that reality were different from how it is. We spend enormous energy pushing away the unpleasant, creating a constant state of inner conflict and tension. This deep, triple thirst, this tanha, is the root that feeds our dukkha. It is the force that keeps us shooting the second arrow into ourselves, again and again. This diagnosis might seem grim, but it is in fact the gateway to hope. For if there is a specific, identifiable cause for our suffering, then there can also be a cure. This is the promise of the third noble truth, nirodha, the truth of cessation. It states, simply and powerfully, that the cessation of dukkha is possible by completely letting go of, by releasing our grip on this relentless thirst, this tanha. The suffering can come to an end. The end of suffering has a name, nibbana in Pali, or nirvana. This is perhaps one of the most misunderstood words in all of spiritual language. Nirvana is not a heavenly paradise you go to after you die. It is not a place of eternal bliss in the clouds. It is a state of mind, an attainable reality that can be experienced right here, in this very life. The word itself means to extinguish or to blow out, like blowing out the flame of a candle. What is extinguished are the fires of greed, hatred, and delusion, the very fires of tanha that fuel our suffering. It is the end of the mind's fever. It is a state of profound peace, unshakable freedom, and supreme clarity, a mind that is no longer pushed and pulled by the winds of praise and blame, gain and loss, pleasure and pain. It is discovering a deep well of well-being within yourself that is not dependent on external conditions. The third truth is the ultimate message of hope. It tells us that liberation is not a myth, that an end to our inner turmoil is not a fantasy, but a real possibility for any human being willing to walk the path. So, if there is a diagnosis and a prognosis of a complete cure, what then is the treatment plan? This is the fourth noble truth, Magga, the path that leads to the cessation of suffering. This is not a path of blind faith, but a practical, systematic training of the mind, a way of life known as the Noble Eightfold Path. It is a comprehensive guide to ethical conduct, mental discipline, and transformative wisdom. This path is not a linear sequence of steps, but rather 8 interconnected aspects of life that are to be developed simultaneously, each one supporting and strengthening the others. It is the middle way, avoiding the extremes of harsh asceticism and mindless indulgence. These 8 factors are right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. We will explore each of these beautiful, life-altering paths in great detail on our journey together. For now, it is enough to know that a path exists, a clear, well-trodden road that countless beings have walked before. It is a path of practice, of seeing for oneself, of transforming our understanding and our heart. Having understood the nature of our condition, its cause, the possibility of its cure, and the existence of a clear path to healing, we now need to pick up the first, most essential tool for the journey. We must learn how to observe the mind, how to see the arising of Tana and the mechanism of the second arrow as it happens. This foundational tool, the very lamp that will illuminate the way, is the practice of mindfulness. In our exploration of the human condition, we have seen that our suffering often arises not from life itself, but from the stories our minds tell about it, from the second arrow we unknowingly shoot into ourselves. We have seen that the engine of this suffering is a deep, abiding thirst, a constant craving and aversion. So, the most pressing question becomes, how do we begin to slow this engine down? How do we learn to drop the second arrow before it even takes flight? The answer, the fundamental skill and the heart of this entire path, is the practice of mindfulness, or sati. Mindfulness is the soul's anchor in the stormy sea of thought. It is the simple, yet revolutionary act of paying attention, on purpose, in the present moment, and without judgment. Let's unpack that, because every part of that definition is a key to freedom. Paying attention, on purpose, means we are making a conscious choice to direct our awareness. So much of our life is lived on autopilot. Our bodies are in one place, but our minds are lost somewhere in the labyrinth of the past, or the fog of the future. We eat without tasting. We walk without feeling the ground beneath our feet. We listen to loved ones while already formulating our own reply. Mindfulness is the gentle but firm act of calling the mind home. In the present moment is the destination. The past is a memory, a ghost. The future is a fantasy, a projection. The only place life ever truly happens, the only place we can feel, learn, grow, and experience reality, is right here, right now. The present moment is the only home we truly have. To be mindful is to arrive fully in that home, finally, and perhaps most importantly, without judgment. This is the radical kindness of the practice. As you begin to observe your inner world, you will notice thoughts, feelings, and bodily sensations. The mind will immediately try to label them. This is good, this is bad. I shouldn't be thinking this. This feeling is wrong. Non-judgmental awareness means we simply note what is present without getting caught in the drama of criticism or praise. We observe our anger, our joy, our boredom, our anxiety with the same calm, curious, and compassionate attention that a scientist might give to a natural phenomenon. It is not about stopping our thoughts or emptying our minds. That is a common and unhelpful misconception. The mind's nature is to think, just as the heart's nature is to beat. The practice is not to create a blank state, but to change our relationship with what is happening in the mind. We learn to sit on the bank of the river of thought, watching the currents flow by, without being swept away by them. So how do we begin this practice? The most universal and accessible gateway to mindfulness is the breath. Your breath is your most faithful companion. It is with you from the moment of your birth to the moment of your death, and it is always happening in the present moment. Let's try it, just for a moment, right now. You don't need to be in a special posture or a silent room. Wherever you are, just bring a gentle awareness to the fact that you are breathing. Find a posture that feels both relaxed and alert. You can close your eyes if that's comfortable, or just soften your gaze. Now, simply feel the sensation of the breath as it enters your body and as it leaves your body. You might feel it as a coolness at the tip of the nostrils, or as the gentle rising and falling of your chest or your abdomen. Don't try to change the breath. Don't force it to be deeper or slower. Just let it be exactly as it is, and let your awareness rest upon its natural rhythm, in and out, rising and falling. Inevitably, within a few seconds, you will notice that your mind has wandered. It has drifted into a thought about what you need to do later, a memory from yesterday, a fragment of a song. This is not a failure. This is not a mistake. This is what minds do. The moment you realize your mind has wandered is a moment of perfect mindfulness. In that moment, you have woken up from the dream of thought. The practice is simply this. When you notice the mind has wandered, gently acknowledge where it went, without any scolding or frustration, and then, with great kindness, gently escort your attention back to the sensation of the breath, in and out. This is the entire practice, wandering, noticing, and gently returning, over and over again. Each return is like a push-up for the brain, strengthening the muscle of attention and compassion. You are not just observing the breath, you are cultivating a profound attitude of patience, acceptance, and gentle persistence toward yourself. While this formal practice of sitting meditation is incredibly powerful, the true goal is to bring this quality of awareness into every moment of our lives. Mindfulness is not meant to be confined to a cushion. There is a beautiful story about a great Zen master who was asked for his secret to a long and happy life. He replied simply, "When I eat, I eat. When I walk, I walk. When I sleep, I sleep." The person asking was confused and said, "But master, everyone does that." The master smiled and replied, "Number, when most people eat, they are thinking of 100 other things. When they walk, their mind is already at their destination. When they try to sleep, they are reliving the day's troubles. When I eat, I just eat." This is the heart of mindfulness in daily life. You can practice it right now. The next time you drink a cup of tea, try drinking it mindfully. Feel the warmth of the cup in your hands. See the color of the liquid. Smell its aroma before you even take a sip. When you do drink, taste it fully, feeling it in your mouth. You can transform the most mundane activities into profound meditations. When you wash the dishes, feel the warm water on your hands. See the soap bubbles. Hear the sound of the plates. When you walk from one room to another, feel the soles of your feet making contact with the floor. When you listen to a friend, listen with your whole being, receiving their words without already preparing your defense or your advice. This practice creates a space, a pause between a stimulus and your habitual reaction. In that space lies your freedom. The first arrow of a stressful email arrives. Instead of instantly reacting with the second arrow of anxiety, the mindful pause allows you to feel the tension in your shoulders, to take a conscious breath, and to choose a wiser response. This is how we stop shooting second arrows. We become present enough to see the bow being drawn, and we choose to put it down. This stability of mind, this capacity to remain present and anchored, is the firm ground we need for the next stage of our journey. Now that we have learned how to be still and look, we can begin to investigate the true nature of what we are seeing. By anchoring ourselves in the present moment with mindfulness, we create a clear laboratory to observe the fundamental laws of existence as they unfold within our own experience. The first and most important of these laws, the one that mindfulness reveals with startling clarity, is the universal truth of impermanence. With the anchor of mindfulness firmly in place, we have created a space of stillness from which to observe the world, both inside and out. And as we sit in this quiet awareness, paying attention to the breath, to the sounds around us, to the ever-shifting landscape of our own minds, one truth begins to dawn with undeniable clarity. Everything is moving, nothing is static. The breath that just entered your body is not the same breath that is now leaving it. The thought that was just here has vanished, replaced by another. The feeling of calm you might experience is, itself, a fleeting guest. This direct, intimate observation of constant flux is the gateway to one of the most liberating insights of Buddhist wisdom, the truth of impermanence, or anicca. Impermanence is not a grim philosophy that declares everything to be meaningless. It is a simple, observable fact of reality. Look at your own body. It is not the same body you had 10 years ago, or even 10 seconds ago. Billions of cells are dying and being reborn in every moment. Look at your emotions. Can you hold on to joy forever? Can you banish sadness for good? They arise like clouds in the sky. They linger for a while, and then they dissolve, making way for the next weather pattern of the heart. Our entire modern life is often an undeclared war against this fundamental law of the universe. We fight a desperate battle to make things permanent. We cling to youth. We grasp at moments of pleasure. We build our identities on stable careers and relationships, hoping against hope that they will never change. This struggle, this resistance to the natural flow of life, is a primary source of our anxiety and disappointment. It is like trying to build a solid dam in the middle of a powerful river. The river of life will always win. The more we resist its flow, the more pressure builds up, the more stress we experience, and the more devastating the inevitable breach of our dam becomes. We suffer not because things change, but because we expect them not to, because we cling to them as if they were permanent possessions. When a beautiful moment arises, instead of simply enjoying it for what it is, a part of our mind is already anxious about it ending. When a difficult experience comes, we tense up and fight against it, convinced it will last forever. This is the friction, the inner turmoil, that arises from living in opposition to reality. There is a timeless Taoist story that perfectly illustrates the wisdom of embracing this flow. It is the story of a wise old farmer. One day, his only horse, which he used for plowing his fields, ran away. His neighbors all came to console him. "Oh, what terrible luck," they said. The farmer simply replied, "Good luck? Bad luck? Who knows?" A week later, the horse returned, and it brought with it a herd of 12 wild horses. The neighbors gathered again, this time to celebrate. "What incredible good fortune," they exclaimed. The farmer calmly replied, "Good luck? Bad luck? Who knows?" The next day, the farmer's son was trying to tame one of the wild horses when he was thrown off and broke his leg. The neighbors came once more, full of sympathy. "How awful! What a terrible misfortune," they lamented. The farmer, looking at his son's bandaged leg, just said, "Good luck? Bad luck? Who knows?" A few weeks passed, and the country went to war. Military officials came to the village to forcibly conscript all the able-bodied young men. Because the farmer's son had a broken leg, he was the only young man in the village who was spared. This story teaches us that what appears to be a blessing can contain the seed of a future difficulty, and what appears to be a disaster can hold the seed of an unexpected grace. Life is an unpredictable, ever-changing tapestry. To label any single event as purely good or bad is to see only a tiny thread, not the whole design. The farmer's wisdom lay in his non-attachment to any particular outcome. He understood impermanence. He knew that the river of life was always flowing, and he chose to flow with it, rather than fight against its currents. So how do we apply this profound wisdom in our own lives? How do we learn to dance with the flow instead of trying to stop it? The first gift of embracing anicca is a deeper appreciation for the present moment. When you truly understand that everything is fleeting, the ordinary becomes extraordinary. You savor the taste of your morning coffee a little more because you know the sensation is temporary. You listen more closely to the laughter of a loved one, knowing that moments are precious and unrepeatable. Like watching a magnificent sunset, you don't cling to it and try to stop the sun from setting. Its very beauty is inseparable from the fact that it is a transient display. You simply watch, in awe and gratitude, as it unfolds. Embracing impermanence allows us to love the world more deeply, not less, because we are no longer taking it for granted. We let go of the need to possess our experiences and instead learn to treasure them as they pass through our lives. The second, equally powerful gift of this wisdom is profound resilience in the face of hardship. When you are caught in a storm of difficulty, of grief, of pain, or of fear, the understanding of impermanence becomes a comforting hand on your shoulder. It is the quiet, steady voice that whispers, "This too shall pass." It is not a denial of your pain. The pain is real. The storm is real. But this wisdom reminds you that no storm lasts forever. The clouds will eventually part, and the sun will shine again. This knowledge prevents pain from curdling into despair. It gives you the strength to endure, knowing that your current state of suffering is not a permanent destination. It is a temporary weather pattern passing through the vast sky of your awareness. It allows you to soften your resistance, to stop fighting the storm, and to instead find the strength to simply be with it, knowing that it, like everything else, will change. The practice, then, is to continually bring this awareness into your life. Through mindfulness, notice the constant change. Notice the beginning, middle, and end of a breath. Notice the arising and passing of thoughts. When you feel joy, acknowledge its presence, enjoy it fully, and recognize its impermanent nature without fear. When you feel sorrow, acknowledge its presence, allow it to be there without resistance, and recognize its impermanent nature with patience. We have now seen that all the objects of our experience, our thoughts, our feelings, our bodily sensations, and all the circumstances of the world around us are in a constant state of flux. They are like a river, flowing and changing, with no solid ground to stand on. But this raises a deeper question. What about the one who is watching all of this? What about the I, the self, the observer who seems to be witnessing this endless parade of change? Surely, this self, this core of our being, must be stable and permanent, right? As we look deeper into the heart of our own experience, we are about to encounter the most radical and liberating insight of all, the truth that will untie the final knot of our suffering. We are about to investigate the nature of the self itself. We have journeyed together into the flowing river of existence and have come to see with our own eyes the universal truth of impermanence. Every sight, every sound, every thought, every emotion, and every cell in our body is in a constant state of flux, arising and passing away moment by moment. This realization naturally leads us to a profound and unsettling question. If everything I experience is changing, what about the one who is doing the experiencing? What is this I that seems to be the stable center of my universe, the constant witness to this endless flow of change? This inquiry leads us to the heart of the Buddha's most radical and transformative teaching, the wisdom of not-self, or anatta. This concept can, at first, feel frightening, as if it is pulling the rug out from under our very feet. But if we can have the courage to investigate it with an open mind, we will find that it is not a teaching of annihilation, but the ultimate key to liberation, a way to lay down the heaviest burden we have ever carried. The teaching of anatta does not claim that you do not exist. You are here, reading these words, breathing, thinking, feeling. Instead, it asks us to investigate what this you truly is. When we look closely, what we call a self or an I is not a solid, independent, unchanging entity. Rather, it is a dynamic, interdependent process, a temporary gathering of 5 distinct streams of energy and experience. These are known as the 5 aggregates, or the 5 skandhas. The first is the aggregate of form. This is our physical body, which we have already seen is in a constant state of change. The second is feeling. These are the raw sensations that arise whenever there is contact with the world. They are either pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. These feelings are like bubbles on the surface of water, appearing and vanishing in an instant. The third aggregate is perception. This is the mind's function of recognizing and labeling things: tree, car, friend, threat. The fourth, and often the busiest, is mental formations. This includes all of our thoughts, our opinions, our moods, our habits, our intentions, and our emotional reactions. It is the storyteller, the planner, the worrier, the judge within our minds. The fifth aggregate is consciousness. This is the fundamental quality of awareness itself, the simple knowing of an experience. There is eye consciousness that knows a sight, ear consciousness that knows a sound, and mind consciousness that knows a thought. The profound insight of anatta is that what we call I is nothing more than the interplay of these 5 changing processes. There is no separate CEO in the headquarters of your mind who owns these aggregates or directs their flow. The body, feelings, perceptions, thoughts, and consciousness are all happening, but there is no permanent self behind them, pulling the strings. The self is a verb, not a noun. It is a process, not a thing. There is a classic story that brilliantly illustrates this. A wise king named Milinda once came to visit a great Buddhist sage named Nagasena. The king, a sharp intellectual, wanted to test the sage's wisdom. He asked, "Venerable sir, what is your name? By what name are you known?" Nagasena replied that he was known as Nagasena, but that this was merely a convenient designation, a name in common use, for there was no permanent person or soul to be found. The king was astounded and argued, "If there is no person, then who is it that wears these robes and takes this food? Who is it that meditates and studies?" Nagasena remained calm and asked the king, "Your Majesty, how did you arrive here today? Did you walk, or did you come in a chariot?" The king, proud of his royal transport, replied that he had come in a chariot. "Excellent," said Nagasena. "Then please, Your Majesty, define for me what a chariot is. Is the pole the chariot?" "No, venerable sir," said the king. "Is the axle the chariot?" "No," replied the king. "Are the wheels, the frame, the ropes, or the yoke the chariot?" To each question, the king had to reply, "No, venerable sir." Nagasena then said, "So, is the chariot something separate from all of its parts?" "No," said the king, beginning to understand. Nagasena concluded, "Then, Your Majesty, a chariot is just a convenient name, a label we give to the collection of the pole, the axle, the wheels, and the frame, all assembled and working together. In the ultimate sense, there is no chariot to be found." He then smiled gently and said, "It is the same with Nagasena. It is but a name for the collection of the body, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness. In the ultimate sense, no permanent person can be found." This story reveals how we suffer by clinging to a false sense of self. We identify with these changing aggregates and believe this is me, this is mine. When a negative thought arises, mental formations, we grasp it and declare, I am a failure. When a painful feeling arises, we identify with it and say, I am a sad person. When our body form ages or gets sick, we feel that our very self is under attack. This clinging creates a small, fragile, and terrified ego that we must spend our entire lives defending. We take things personally. We are hurt by criticism because it threatens our constructed identity. We are puffed up by praise because it validates this imaginary self. We live in a constant state of insecurity, protecting a phantom. The wisdom of anatta is the great unburdening. It is the realization that you are not your thoughts. You are the sky, and the thoughts are merely clouds passing through. You don't have to believe them or identify with them. You are not your emotions. You are the space in which emotions can arise and pass away. When anger visits, you don't have to become an angry person. You can simply acknowledge, anger is here, and allow it to move on without building a house for it. Understanding this brings an incredible lightness and freedom. The need to be right, the fear of looking foolish, the constant pressure to maintain a certain image of ourselves, all of this begins to soften. We can laugh at ourselves more easily. We can be more open and less defensive. And a beautiful thing happens. As our obsession with our own small self diminishes, our capacity for connection with others naturally grows. We look at another person and we no longer see a completely separate entity, but another flowing process of these same 5 aggregates. Their desire for happiness and freedom from suffering is just like our own. This insight is the foundation of true compassion. The walls of separation begin to dissolve. Now, this deconstruction of the self is not the end of the journey. In fact, it is the true beginning. By understanding that we are not a fixed, solid entity, we clear the ground. We remove the weeds of ego clinging and self-obsession. We have created a wide, open, fertile space in the garden of the mind. Into this spaciousness, we can now begin to consciously and skillfully cultivate the most beautiful flowers. We can choose what qualities to nurture, and the first, most essential, and most healing quality to plant in this newly liberated ground is the boundless, unconditional warmth of loving kindness. Having courageously looked into the heart of reality and seen the truths of impermanence and not self, we might feel a sense of vast, open space. The tight, defensive knot of the ego has begun to loosen. We have cleared the inner ground of the illusion of a fixed, separate self that must be constantly protected. Now, into this bright, open space, we can begin to cultivate one of the most beautiful and powerful qualities of the human heart. We can plant the seed of metta, or loving kindness. Metta is a Pali word that is often translated as love, but it is a love that is radically different from our usual notions of romantic or conditional affection. It is not a possessive love that says, I love you because you make me happy. It is not a transactional love that expects something in return. Metta is a boundless, unconditional, and benevolent friendliness. It is the sincere, heartfelt wish for well-being, for happiness, and for peace, extended first to ourselves, and then radiated outwards to encompass all living beings without exception. It is a steady warmth, an orientation of the heart, a quiet intention that we can cultivate and grow, regardless of the circumstances we find ourselves in. The journey of metta begins in the most intimate and often the most difficult place, with ourselves. For so many of us, our inner world is governed by a harsh inner critic, a relentless voice of judgment that catalogues our flaws, replays our mistakes, and tells us we are not good enough. We would never speak to a friend the way we often speak to ourselves. The practice of metta invites us to begin a revolution of kindness within our own hearts. It is based on a simple, practical truth. You cannot pour from an empty cup. We cannot offer genuine, sustainable kindness to others if we cannot first offer it to ourselves. Self-compassion is not selfish. It is the necessary foundation for all true generosity and connection. It is the act of filling our own well so that its waters can naturally overflow to quench the thirst of others. The practice of cultivating loving kindness is a form of meditation, a training of the heart. Let us explore its gentle and transformative steps. You can begin by finding a comfortable posture, just as you would for mindfulness of breath. Allow your body to be relaxed and your heart to be soft. The practice unfolds in expanding circles of benevolence. First, you bring yourself to mind. You can picture yourself as a small child, innocent and deserving of love, or simply hold an awareness of your own presence. Then, you silently repeat a series of phrases, allowing the intention behind them to permeate your being. Classic phrases include, "May I be safe," "May I be healthy in body and mind," "May I be happy and content," "May I live with ease and well-being." You are not trying to force a feeling. You are simply planting the seeds of this intention. If feelings of unworthiness or resistance arise, you simply notice them with the same non-judgmental awareness we cultivated in mindfulness, and you gently return to repeating the phrases. Be patient with yourself. This is an act of deep reparenting for the heart. Once you have spent some time offering this kindness to yourself, the circle expands. You bring to mind a benefactor or a dear friend, someone for whom you have easy and uncomplicated feelings of warmth and gratitude. You hold an image of them in your mind's eye, and you extend the same wishes to them. May you be safe, may you be healthy, may you be happy, may you live with ease. Feel your heart naturally radiating this warmth towards them, wishing them every good thing. The third circle is a neutral person. This might be a cashier at the store, a neighbor you see but don't know well, or someone you pass on the street. By extending metta to this person, you begin to break down the walls of indifference that separate us from most of humanity. You recognize their wish to be happy is just like your own. The fourth circle is the most challenging and the most transformative. You bring to mind a difficult person, someone with whom you have conflict or who has hurt you. This is not an exercise in condoning their harmful actions. It is an act of liberation for your own heart. You recognize that holding on to anger, resentment, and hatred is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. It harms you far more than it harms them. So, with courage, you try to extend the phrases of metta to them for the sake of your own peace. If this is too difficult, you can start with, "To the best of my ability, I wish you well." This practice can dissolve the hardest knots of bitterness in the heart. Finally, the circle expands to its fullest extent. You offer loving kindness to all beings, everywhere. You radiate these wishes in all directions, north, south, east, and west, to all creatures, great and small, seen and unseen, near and far. May all beings be safe. May all beings be happy. May all beings be free. You connect with a sense of boundless, universal kinship. The power of metta is not merely a pleasant feeling, it is a formidable force for transformation. There is a powerful story from the life of the Buddha that demonstrates this. A rival of the Buddha, wanting to harm him, arranged for a notoriously fierce and wild elephant named Nalagiri to be intoxicated and set loose on the path where the Buddha was walking. As the enraged elephant charged, trumpeting and destroying everything in its path, the Buddha's followers panicked and fled. But the Buddha stood his ground, perfectly calm. He did not raise a weapon or shout a command. He simply looked at the charging beast and radiated an immense, powerful, and unwavering field of pure metta. The story says that as the energy of loving kindness reached the elephant, its rage began to subside. Its steps slowed, its eyes softened, and when it reached the Buddha, the once ferocious animal knelt down before him, completely subdued by the sheer force of unconditional love. This teaches us that metta is the ultimate antidote to anger, fear, and aggression. It is not weakness, but the highest form of strength, a courage that can tame the wildest beasts, both outside of us and within our own minds. When we fill our hearts with loving kindness, there is simply no room for hatred to take root. It changes how we see the world. We begin to see the person behind the angry behavior, recognizing that their aggression often comes from their own deep pain and suffering. This doesn't mean we allow ourselves to be harmed, but it changes our response from one of reactive anger to one of considered wisdom and strength. This wish for all beings to be happy, which is metta, naturally leads to its inseparable twin. When we see beings who are not happy, who are actively in pain and distress, our wish for their happiness transforms into a profound wish for them to be free from that suffering. This active and empathetic wish for others to be free from pain is called compassion, or karuna. Metta and karuna are said to be the two wings of a bird. Both are needed for balanced flight on the path to awakening. One cannot fly with only one wing. So, let us now turn our attention to this other great wing, the tender heart of compassion. If loving kindness, or metta, is the beautiful wish for all beings to find happiness, then its inseparable companion, compassion, or karuna, is what arises in our hearts when we witness beings who are not happy. It is the heart's natural response to the presence of suffering. When the tender warmth of metta encounters the cold, hard reality of pain, it transforms into karuna. It is the trembling of the heart, the deep and resonant empathy that feels the pain of another and gives rise to an urgent wish. May you be free from this suffering. It is essential, from the very beginning, to understand what compassion is not. It is not pity. Pity is a distant and often condescending emotion. It looks down from a position of superiority, creating a separation between the one who pities and the one who is pitied. It says, "Oh, you poor thing, I am so glad I am not in your position." Compassion, on the other hand, is built on a sense of radical equality and shared humanity. It looks across at another person and says, "I understand. Your suffering could be my suffering. Your fear, your loss, your confusion. I know these things within my own heart." It dissolves the illusion of separation and builds a bridge of connection from one heart to another. Furthermore, true compassion is not a state of being overwhelmed by the world's sorrow. It is not about drowning in the pain of others. That is what we might call idiot compassion, an empathy that becomes so swamped by emotion that it is paralyzed and useless. Wise compassion, or karuna, is imbued with strength and clarity. The bodhisattva, the archetypal figure of compassion in Buddhism, is not depicted as weeping helplessly in a corner. They are shown as active, engaged, and courageous beings. The image is not of someone who jumps into a raging river to drown alongside a struggling person, but of one who stands firmly on the bank, thinks clearly about the best way to help, and skillfully throws them a rope. Compassion does not mean taking on the suffering of others as your own. It means being moved by their suffering to act wisely for their benefit. It is the engine of altruism, the motivation that transforms empathy into helpful action. So how do we cultivate this brave and tender heart? We can begin by turning the mindful gaze inward, reflecting on the nature of our own lives. We can contemplate the undeniable realities that all beings, including ourselves, must face. We all experience sickness. We all must face the process of aging. We all must one day confront our own death and the death of those we love. We have all felt the pain of being separated from what we hold dear and the frustration of not getting what we want. These are not individual failings or personal tragedies. They are the universal fabric of sentient existence. When we see our own struggles not as an isolated burden but as a part of this shared human condition, our personal pain ceases to be a wall that isolates us. Instead, It becomes a doorway, a portal through which we can genuinely understand and connect with the suffering of every other being who has ever lived. Our own vulnerability becomes the very source of our strength and our empathy. There is no story that illustrates this transformative journey from personal grief to universal compassion more beautifully than that of Kisa Gautami. Kisa Gautami was a young woman whose first and only child had died. Consumed by a grief so powerful that it bordered on madness, she refused to accept his death. She roamed the streets, clutching the small, lifeless body to her chest, begging everyone she met for a medicine that could bring her son back to life. Some mocked her, others ignored her, until a wise person took pity on her and directed her to the one person who might have such a medicine, the Buddha. She ran to the Buddha, laid her son at his feet, and desperately pleaded for him to perform a miracle. The Buddha looked at her with eyes of immense compassion and said, "There is only one medicine that can help you. I need you to go into the village and bring me back a single mustard seed. But," he added, "it must be taken from a house where no one has ever lost a child, a spouse, a parent, or a friend." Filled with a surge of desperate hope, Kisa Gautami rushed into the village. She went to the first house and asked, "The Buddha has sent me to fetch a mustard seed for medicine. Can you give me one?" "Of course," the woman of the house replied. "But before I take it," Kisa Gautami asked, "can you tell me, has this house ever known death?" The woman's face fell. "Oh, the living are few, but the dead are many. We lost our eldest son just last year." With a heavy heart, Kisa Gautami went to the next house, and the next, and the next. At every single door she heard the same story. One family had lost a father, another had lost a mother, another had lost a husband, a sister, a cousin. House after house, she could not find a single home untouched by the sorrow of loss. As the day wore on and dusk began to fall, the truth began to dawn in her heart, washing over her in waves of profound realization. Her suffering was not unique. Her grief was not a solitary island. The pain she felt in her heart was the pain of all humanity. She gently carried her son to the charnel ground, laid him to rest, and looked at the flickering lights of the village, thinking to herself, "How selfish I have been in my grief. Death is common to all." Her tight, personal "my son," my grief had dissolved into the vast, open ocean of universal sorrow. Her heart had broken open, not in despair, but in a profound and boundless compassion for all beings caught in the same cycle of birth and death. This is the path of Karuna. It moves from the personal to the universal. And just as Kisa Gautami was moved to action by her newfound understanding, so too is true compassion never passive. It is a motivating force. It is the force that inspires a doctor to heal, a teacher to educate, a parent to nurture, and a friend to listen. The action itself does not have to be grand. You do not need to solve world hunger to be compassionate. The act of compassion can be as simple as offering your full, undivided attention to a friend who is in pain, listening without judging or trying to fix them. It can be a small gesture of kindness to a stranger who seems to be struggling. It can be volunteering your time for a cause you believe in. True compassion is simply the heart's intelligence responding to suffering with a wish to help. We have now explored the two great wings of the awakened heart, the wish for beings to find happiness, which is metta, and the wish for them to be free from suffering, which is karuna. But to fly steadily, we need a tail to provide balance and lift. What happens when we encounter beings who are already happy, successful, and flourishing? Sometimes a shadow can fall upon our hearts, the shadow of envy or comparison. To ensure our flight is joyful and stable, we must cultivate the third of these divine qualities, the ability to rejoice in the good fortune of others. This is the beautiful practice of sympathetic joy. We have walked the path of the open heart, learning to radiate loving kindness, the wish for all to be happy, and to cultivate compassion, the wish for all to be free from suffering. These two great wings, metta and karuna, give us the power to fly through the world with grace and empathy. Yet, to ensure our flight is steady and joyful, we must cultivate a third quality, one that addresses a subtle and often challenging corner of the human heart. What is our genuine gut-level reaction when we see others succeeding? What happens inside us when a colleague gets the promotion we wanted, when a friend finds a joyful relationship, or when we see images of people who seem to have everything we desire? In these moments, a shadow can arise, the cold, tight, and poisonous shadow of envy and jealousy. The direct, radiant antidote to this shadow is the third of the 4 divine abodes, the practice of mudita, often translated as sympathetic or appreciative joy. Mudita is the genuine, wholehearted, and unselfish ability to rejoice in the happiness, success, and good fortune of others. It is the opposite of envy. It is the celebration of another's victory, as if it were your own. To understand the beauty of mudita, we must first look honestly at its opposite. Envy is one of the most painful and isolating of all human emotions. It stems from a deep-seated and fundamentally flawed belief in scarcity. Envy whispers in our ear that happiness is a limited commodity, like a pie with only so many slices. If someone else gets a big slice, it means there is less for us. This belief turns life into a grim competition. We are constantly measuring, comparing, and evaluating our own worth based on the achievements of others. This habit of comparison is the fuel for the fragile ego, the sense of a separate I that we explored earlier. This ego feels diminished by another's success and threatened by another's joy. It is a lonely and bitter way to live, constantly looking over our shoulder, unable to truly celebrate with anyone, trapped in a prison of our own making. Mudita is the key that unlocks this prison door. It challenges the very premise of scarcity. It reveals the truth that happiness is not a finite resource. In fact, happiness is boundless, and the more it is shared, the more it grows. Like all qualities of the heart, mudita is not something you either have or don't have. It is a skill that can be consciously cultivated. The practice begins, as always, in a gentle and manageable way. First, bring to mind a person you love dearly, someone whose happiness is genuinely important to you, like a close friend, a child, or a beloved mentor. Now, recall a specific instance of their success or joy. Perhaps they achieved a lifelong goal, recovered from an illness, or was simply having a moment of pure, unadulterated happiness. Hold that image and that feeling in your mind, instead of letting your own thoughts of "what about me" intrude. Make a conscious effort to share in their joy. Feel the smile spread across your own face as you remember their smile. Say silently in your heart, "I am so happy for you. Your joy is my joy." May your happiness and good fortune continue and grow. Allow yourself to bask in the reflected warmth of their good fortune. Once you have practiced with someone close, you can gradually expand the circle. Bring to mind a neutral person, an acquaintance or colleague. Perhaps you hear they've received some good news. Notice the mind's tendency to either ignore it or to feel a slight twinge of envy. Gently set that aside and consciously practice rejoicing for them. How wonderful for them. I am happy that they are happy. This practice begins to rewire the brain's habitual patterns of comparison. The most advanced practice, of course, is to try and generate mudita for someone you consider a rival, or someone whose success has actively made you feel jealous in the past. This is not easy, and it requires great patience. The goal is not to force a feeling, but to recognize that your envy is a source of your own suffering. By wishing them well, even to the best of your limited ability, you are not necessarily helping them. You are freeing yourself from the bitterness that corrodes your own heart. Perhaps the most vivid modern example of collective mudita can be found in a sports stadium. Imagine you are part of a crowd of 50,000 people, all supporting the same team. The game is tense. Then, in a moment of brilliant skill, your team scores a goal. What happens? An explosion of pure, collective joy. 50,000 separate individuals become one roaring voice. Strangers hug each other. They jump up and down, their faces alight with ecstatic delight. Now think about this. The goal did not put money in their pockets. It did not solve their personal problems. They gained nothing tangible from it. Yet, they experience a moment of profound, shared happiness. They are rejoicing in the success of others, their team. This is mudita on a massive scale. The practice of mudita in our daily lives is to learn how to see all of humanity as our home team. When we hear of a scientific breakthrough that will help millions, we can feel that same thrill of victory. When a friend overcomes a great obstacle, we can cheer for them with the same passion as we would for our team's winning goal. The benefits of this practice are immeasurable. It is a direct and powerful pathway out of the suffering of jealousy, resentment, and comparison. It dramatically increases our opportunities for happiness. If we are only happy when good things happen to us, our chances for joy are quite limited. But if we can learn to be happy when good things happen to any of the 8 billion people on this planet, we have created for ourselves a truly inexhaustible source of joy. There is always someone, somewhere, experiencing a moment of happiness we can share in. This practice makes us lighter. It makes us better friends, more supportive partners, and more encouraging colleagues. People are naturally drawn to those who can genuinely celebrate their successes. The heart that is filled with mudita is a warm and welcoming place, a source of light in a world that is often too focused on competition and criticism. We have now cultivated the 3 great qualities of loving kindness, compassion, and sympathetic joy. Our hearts are learning to wish well, to empathize with sorrow, and to celebrate success. Yet, these powerful emotions, if left unchecked, can become unbalanced. Our loving kindness can become clinging attachment. Our compassion can tip over into burnout and grief. Our sympathetic joy can become manic excitement. To hold all of these beautiful qualities in a vast, stable, and wise container, we need the 4th and final of these divine abodes. We need the quality that provides balance, perspective, and unshakable peace. This is the profound and quiet strength of equanimity. We have now tended to the garden of the heart, cultivating the beautiful blossoms of loving kindness, compassion, and sympathetic joy. We have learned to wish all beings well, to feel with them in their sorrow, and to celebrate with them in their happiness. Yet, these powerful and beautiful emotions, like wild horses, can be untamed. Our love can become possessive and lead to grief when we lose what we are attached to. Our compassion, faced with the overwhelming suffering of the world, can collapse into despair and burnout. Our joy can become giddy excitement, or be unfairly biased towards only those within our inner circle. To bring these powerful energies into a state of profound balance and harmony, we need a 4th, culminating quality. This is the quiet, unshakable, and spacious heart of upekkha, or equanimity. It is absolutely crucial to understand that equanimity is not indifference. It is not a cold, sterile, or uncaring detachment. Indifference is a state of shutting down, of refusing to feel. Equanimity is a state of opening up so completely that you are able to feel everything without being thrown off balance. It is the vast, deep, and silent ocean that can hold every wave, from the most joyful crest to the deepest, darkest trough, without its fundamental tranquility being disturbed. Equanimity is the calm center in the eye of life's hurricane. It is the spaciousness of the blue sky that remains unstained and unaffected by the clouds, whether they are white and fluffy or dark and stormy. It is a state of profound inner balance, clarity, and unwavering peace, a heart that has found its true and steady center. Upekkha is the guardian that protects and perfects the other 3 sublime states. It ensures that our loving kindness is universal, not selective. It is easy to love our friends and family, but true metta shines on all beings equally, just as the sun shines on the righteous and the unrighteous alike. Equanimity is what allows our love to be a radiant, steady warmth, rather than a grasping, needy fire that burns out when it doesn't get the fuel it wants. It protects our compassion from becoming what is called idiot compassion. It allows us to feel the pain of the world without being drowned by it. With equanimity, we can offer help from a place of strength and wisdom, not from a place of emotional overwhelm. It allows us to understand our limits and to care sustainably, preventing the noble impulse of compassion from leading to debilitating burnout. And it protects our sympathetic joy from becoming mere excitement or favoritism, allowing us to genuinely rejoice in the good fortune of all, not just our preferred team. This profound balance is cultivated by facing life's inevitable ups and downs, what Buddhism calls the 8 worldly winds. These are the pairs of opposites that constantly blow through our lives: praise and blame, success and failure, pleasure and pain, fame and disrepute. Most of us are like kites caught in these winds, soaring high on praise and success, then crashing down in the face of blame and failure. The heart of equanimity is like a great mountain. The winds still blow, sometimes with hurricane force, but the mountain remains stable, grounded, and unmoved. It doesn't mean we don't feel the pleasure of success or the sting of criticism. It means we don't get swept away by them. We can experience them fully, but we don't cling to the praise or resist the blame. We see them for what they are: temporary, impersonal, and passing phenomena, like weather. This stability is rooted in a deep wisdom, particularly the understanding of karma. This is not a belief in fatalism, but a clear recognition that all beings, including ourselves, are the heirs of our own actions. Every person is walking their own path, making their own choices, and experiencing the results of those choices. We can love them, we can support them, we can help them in every skillful way we can, but we cannot walk their path for them. We cannot make their choices for them, and ultimately, we cannot shield them from the consequences of their actions. Understanding this is immensely liberating. It frees us from the impossible burden of trying to control the lives of others, a task that only leads to frustration and exhaustion. It allows us to offer help freely, without being attached to the outcome. We do our best, and then we let go, respecting the autonomy and the journey of the other person. There is a classic Zen story that perfectly captures the essence of equanimity in action. 2 monks, one senior and one junior, were on a long journey. They came to a river with a strong current. A beautiful young woman stood there, afraid to cross. Without hesitation, the senior monk hoisted her onto his back, carried her across the swirling water, and gently set her down on the other side. She thanked him and went on her way. The 2 monks continued their journey in silence. Hours passed. The sun began to set. Finally, the junior monk, who had been stewing in agitation all afternoon, could contain himself no longer. He burst out, "Brother, how could you do that? We are monks. We have taken vows not to touch a woman. It was a serious violation of our precepts." The senior monk looked at his young companion with a calm, kind expression. "Brother," he said gently, "I left that woman by the riverbank hours ago. Are you still carrying her?" This story brilliantly illustrates the difference between action and clinging. The senior monk acted out of pure compassion and then let the experience go completely. His mind was free. The junior monk, however, became entangled in judgment, rules, and mental proliferation. He was the one who was truly burdened, carrying the woman in his mind long after the event was over. The senior monk's state of mind was equanimity. We practice upekkha by observing our own minds. When a pleasant feeling arises, we notice the tendency to grasp and hold on to it. When an unpleasant feeling arises, we notice the tendency to push it away. The practice is to simply allow them to be there, watching them arise and pass away without getting involved. We can also practice through contemplation, silently reflecting. All beings are the owners of their karma. Their happiness and suffering depend on their own actions, not on my wishes for them. This is not a cold detachment, but a wise and loving acceptance of reality, which allows our hearts to remain open and peaceful, no matter what winds may blow. Having now explored this complete mandala of the awakened heart-loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and the great balancing force of equanimity, we have a powerful set of tools for cultivating wholesome states. But life will inevitably present us with powerful challenges. Among the most difficult of these is the fiery, destructive energy of anger. It is not enough to simply cultivate the good. We must also learn how to skillfully work with the difficult. Therefore, our journey now turns towards the art of transformation, learning how to meet the flames of anger not with more fire, but with the cooling waters of mindfulness and wisdom. Of all the powerful emotions that can sweep through the human heart, few are as consuming and potentially destructive as anger. It is a fire that can burn down relationships, cloud our judgment, and leave a trail of regret in its wake. In our society, we are often taught only two ways to deal with this fire: either to vent it uncontrollably, spreading its flames and causing harm to others, or to suppress it, turning the flames inward where they smolder as resentment and silently poison our own well-being. The path of wisdom offers a third way, a middle path that is neither expression nor suppression. It is the path of transformation, learning to meet the raw energy of anger with mindfulness and compassion, and in doing so, transforming its destructive heat into the illuminating light of understanding. The first step in this transformation is to change our entire view of what anger is. We tend to see anger as a primary problem, an enemy to be vanquished. But in most cases, anger is actually a secondary emotion. It is a mask, a protective shield that our mind throws up to cover something more vulnerable and painful underneath. Anger is often the loud, blustering guard standing at the gate, but the real issue is the tender, wounded person it is trying to protect inside. Behind the fire of anger, you will almost always find the cold shadows of hurt, the trembling of fear, the sting of injustice, or the deep frustration of feeling powerless. Anger is a smoke alarm. The loud, piercing sound is not the fire. It is a signal that there is a fire somewhere that needs your attention. To simply try and shut off the alarm without looking for the source of the smoke is foolish and dangerous. So, when anger arises, our first task is not to attack it, but to listen to it, to understand what message it is trying to deliver. This leads us to the practical, three-step method for working with anger in the moment it arises. The first step is simply recognition, an act of pure mindfulness. The moment you feel the heat of anger begin to rise, before you speak or act, the practice is to pause and turn your attention inward. You don't have to stop the anger, you just have to notice it. You can say to yourself, silently and non-judgmentally, anger is here. I recognize this energy in me. Instead of getting caught up in the story of why you are angry, you bring your attention to the raw, physical sensations of the anger itself. Where do you feel it in your body? Is it a tightness in your chest, a clenching in your jaw, a surge of heat rising to your face, a racing pulse? By anchoring your awareness in these physical sensations, you stay grounded in the present moment. You are observing the energy of anger rather than being possessed by it. This simple act of recognition creates a crucial space, a moment of sanity between the stimulus and your habitual, often destructive, reaction. The second step is the most counterintuitive and perhaps the most healing. It is the practice of acceptance, or mindfully embracing the anger. The great Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh teaches us to treat our anger like a crying baby. When a mother hears her baby crying, she doesn't get angry at the baby or try to ignore it. Her instinct is to pick the baby up, to hold it gently, and to embrace it with tenderness. This embrace doesn't necessarily stop the crying immediately, but it soothes the baby and lets it know it is not alone. We must learn to do the same for the crying baby of anger inside of us. Using the energy of mindfulness, we can silently embrace our anger with compassion. We can say, "Hello, my little anger. I know you are suffering. I am here for you. I will take care of you." This is not an act of agreement with the anger. It is an act of profound self-compassion. You are not fighting the fire, which would only create more conflict. You are pouring the cooling water of mindfulness and kindness directly onto the flames. You will be amazed at how this simple, compassionate embrace can begin to soothe the intensity of the emotion, allowing its raw, destructive power to soften. Once the initial storm of emotion has been calmed by our mindful embrace, we can proceed to the third step, looking deeply. This is the work of wisdom. With a calmer mind, we can now gently ask ourselves, what is underneath this anger? What is the root of this suffering? Perhaps we discover that beneath our anger at a friend's comment is a deep-seated fear of being rejected. Perhaps beneath our rage at a perceived injustice is a feeling of utter powerlessness. Perhaps beneath our irritation at a family member is the simple hurt of feeling unseen or unheard. This honest investigation moves the focus away from blaming the external person or situation and towards understanding our own internal landscape. We stop being a victim of circumstance and become an explorer of our own heart. As Thich Nhat Hanh says, holding on to anger is like grasping a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. You are the one who gets burned. Looking deeply is the process of understanding why we are holding the coal in the first place. And this understanding gives us the wisdom to finally put it down. This practice teaches us that difficult emotions are not our enemies. They are our teachers. Anger is like compost. It's smelly, messy, and we don't want it around. But if we know how to handle it with the skill of mindfulness, this rich, organic material can be transformed into beautiful flowers of wisdom, compassion, and understanding. This is not a one-time fix. It is a lifelong practice of retraining our hearts. Each time anger arises, we have a new opportunity to meet it with recognition, acceptance, and deep looking. Over time, our relationship with this powerful energy fundamentally changes. We are no longer its slave. We become its wise and compassionate caretaker. As we practice transforming our own anger, we naturally begin to let go of the stories of blame and the desire for retribution that fuel it. Our focus shifts from wanting the other person to suffer to wanting our own hearts to be free. This release of the heavy burden of resentment, this courageous act of choosing our own peace over our righteous indignation, has a name. It is the profound and liberating power of forgiveness. As we learn to meet our own anger with mindfulness and compassion, we begin to loosen its fiery grip on our hearts. We see that holding on to rage and resentment is like clutching a burning coal, a self-inflicted wound that sears our own soul long after the initial offense has passed. This dawning wisdom naturally leads us to the doorstep of one of the most courageous and liberating acts a human being can perform, the act of forgiveness. Forgiveness is a deeply misunderstood concept. We often see it as a sign of weakness, as if we are letting the other person get away with it, or as an obligation to forget the harm that was done. But true forgiveness, from a spiritual perspective, is none of these things. It is an act of profound strength, a courageous choice to reclaim your own power and to refuse to allow the past to poison your present. Its primary beneficiary is not the person who is forgiven, but the person who forgives. Let us be very clear about what forgiveness is not. Forgiveness does not mean you are condoning or excusing harmful behavior. It is not saying that what happened was okay. Painful actions have consequences, and setting healthy boundaries, or even removing a toxic person from your life, can be a necessary and compassionate act for all involved. Forgiveness also does not necessarily mean reconciliation. You can forgive someone completely in the quiet of your own heart, without ever speaking to them again. And it certainly does not mean forgetting. The memory of what happened may always remain, but forgiveness is the alchemy that extracts the wisdom from the memory while releasing its painful emotional charge. The memory no longer has the power to hijack your nervous system and dictate your state of mind. Forgiveness, in its essence, is an internal act. It is the conscious decision to cancel a debt. When someone harms us, we feel they owe us something, an apology, restitution, or simply a debt of suffering. We hold this debt in our hearts, and it becomes a heavy, toxic burden. Forgiveness is the act of looking at this debt and deciding, for our own sake, to cancel it. We let it go. We release the other person from the prison of our resentment, and in doing so, we unlock our own cell door. The refusal to forgive is one of the most potent forms of self-harm. There is a famous saying that encapsulates this perfectly. Holding on to resentment is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. We replay the scenes of our hurt over and over in our minds. We stoke the fires of our indignation. We feed the beast of our bitterness, all the while imagining that our suffering is somehow punishing the person who wronged us. But they are most likely living their life, oblivious to our inner turmoil. We are the only one drinking the poison. We are the only one shackled to the past. The refusal to forgive keeps us trapped in a time loop of pain, preventing us from ever being fully present, ever truly tasting the freshness of this moment. It consumes vast amounts of our precious mental and emotional energy, energy that could be used to create, to love, and to grow. The path of forgiveness is a journey, not a single event. It often unfolds in stages and requires immense patience and self-compassion. The first step, paradoxically, is to allow yourself not to forgive. It is to fully acknowledge and honor your pain. You must give your anger and your hurt a voice. Write it down, speak it to a trusted friend. Allow yourself to feel the raw injustice of it all without judgment. You cannot let go of something you have never fully grasped. Denying or minimizing your pain will only cause it to fester in the dark. The second step is to reflect deeply on the cost of not forgiving. See clearly how the resentment is impacting your health, your relationships, and your peace of mind. Recognize that you are the one who is suffering right now because of this burden you are carrying. This realization is often the turning point, the moment you understand that forgiveness is not something you are doing for them, but a profound act of self-care. The final step is the choice itself. It is the gentle but firm intention to let go, to release the story, to drop the hot coal. It may not be a dramatic, cinematic moment. It can be a quiet, whispered decision made in the heart. I am no longer willing to suffer over this. For the sake of my own peace, I let it go. This process can be beautifully illustrated by a simple parable. Two friends were journeying across a vast desert. At one point, they had a terrible argument, and one friend slapped the other across the face. The one who was slapped was deeply hurt, but without a word, he knelt and wrote in the sand, "Today, my best friend slapped me." They continued on their way, and some days later, they came to an oasis. The friend who had been slapped, overjoyed by the sight of water, ran ahead and fell into a patch of quicksand. He began to sink, but his friend rushed to his aid, pulling him out and saving his life. After he had recovered, he found a large rock and carefully began to carve into it. This time, he wrote, "Today my best friend saved my life." The friend who had done both the slapping and the saving was confused. "Why?" he asked. "After I hurt you, did you write in the sand, but now you carve in stone?" The other friend replied, "When someone hurts us, we should write it in the sand, so the winds of forgiveness can erase it away. But when someone does something kind, we should engrave it in stone, so no wind can ever efface it." Perhaps the most challenging and most important forgiveness journey of all is the one directed towards ourselves. We can be our own most merciless judges, holding on to past mistakes and perceived failings with an iron grip. We torment ourselves with what-ifs and should-haves. Self-forgiveness is applying the same compassion to our past selves that we would offer to a dear friend. It is the recognition that at that time, with the level of understanding, wisdom, and emotional resources you had, you did the best you could. To expect your past self to have had the wisdom of your present self is an unfair and painful demand. To forgive yourself is to accept your own imperfect humanity and to allow yourself the grace to grow and change. Forgiveness, then, is a profound form of letting go. It is the release of a past that no longer exists, freeing up our energy to live fully in the only moment we ever have, which is right now. This specific practice of letting go of grievances opens the door to a much broader and even more liberating art. Having learned to release our attachment to old hurts, we can now learn to loosen our grip on all the other things we cling to so tightly: our expectations, our desires, our fears for the future, and our very ideas of who we are. This is the great path of renunciation, not as a grim sacrifice, but as a joyful unburdening. This is the art of letting go. Having learned the courageous art of forgiveness, we have tasted the freedom that comes from letting go of the heavy burden of past grievances. This act of release opens a doorway to a much broader, more profound way of being in the world, the universal practice known as the art of letting go. In the Buddhist tradition, this is sometimes called nekama, or renunciation, a word that can sound severe and joyless. But its true essence is not one of grim sacrifice, it is one of joyful unburdening. It is the discovery that our happiness comes not from getting everything we want, but from releasing our attachment to all the things that cause us to suffer. It is the simple, liberating truth that the tighter you grasp, the more you have to lose. The first and most important thing to understand is that letting go does not mean giving up. It is not a call to apathy, indifference, or irresponsibility. It does not mean you should abandon your goals, your family, or your responsibilities. It is a much more subtle and powerful inner shift. It is the art of participating fully and wholeheartedly in life, while simultaneously letting go of your attachment to the results. Imagine you are an archer. You take your stance, you nock the arrow, you draw the bowstring with skill and focus. You aim carefully, and you release the arrow. You do everything in your power to shoot well, but once the arrow has left the bow, its flight is no longer in your control. A sudden gust of wind may blow it off course. The target might move. Letting go means finding fulfillment in the skillful process of shooting the arrow, not making your happiness entirely dependent on whether it hits the bullseye. You give your absolute best, and then you release the outcome. This attitude frees us from the terrible anxiety of needing to control everything. It allows us to act with integrity and passion, while maintaining a deep inner peace, regardless of success or failure. One of the heaviest things we carry is the weight of our expectations. We walk through life with a detailed mental blueprint of how things should be. We have expectations for our partners, our children, our careers, and for the grand trajectory of our own lives. When reality inevitably deviates from our blueprint, we experience frustration, disappointment, and bitterness. We suffer not because of reality itself, but because reality failed to conform to our demands. Letting go of expectations is the practice of tearing up this rigid blueprint and learning to meet life as it actually is, with openness and curiosity. It means allowing people to be who they are, not who we want them to be. It means accepting the unpredictable flow of life's events, rather than constantly fighting against the current. This does not mean having no standards, or becoming a passive doormat. It simply means we stop demanding that the universe cater to our personal preferences. We trade the brittle rigidity of expectation for the resilient flexibility of acceptance. We must also learn to let go of the two great phantoms that haunt the human mind: the past and the future. Our minds are like unlicensed time machines, constantly pulling us away from the only moment that is real, the present. We are dragged back into the past to relive old regrets, to refight old battles, and to ache over old losses. Or we are catapulted into the future to worry about things that have not happened, to rehearse for potential disasters, and to live in a state of anxious anticipation. Letting go, in this context, is the core practice of mindfulness. It is the act of noticing when the mind has time traveled, and gently, without judgment, bringing it back to the here and now. It is the recognition that the past is a memory and the future is a fantasy. Life is only available in the present moment. By repeatedly letting go of our mental excursions into what was or what might be, we learn to truly inhabit our own lives. Perhaps the most subtle and profound practice is to let go of our attachment to a fixed identity and our cherished views. As we've seen, we cling to a story of who we are. I am a creative person. I am a strong person. I am a victim. We then spend our lives trying to defend this story, becoming fragile and defensive whenever it is challenged. Letting go means holding this sense of self more lightly, understanding that we are a process, not a finished product, and allowing ourselves the space to grow and change. Likewise, we cling ferociously to our opinions, our beliefs, and our worldviews, convinced that I am right. This attachment to being right is a major source of conflict, from minor domestic squabbles to major global wars. Letting go of views doesn't mean becoming unintelligent or having no moral compass. It means cultivating intellectual humility. It means having the wisdom to listen, the grace to admit when we are wrong, and the understanding that our perspective is just one limited view of a vast and complex reality. There is a simple yet powerful story that captures the tragic comedy of our own self-imposed suffering. In some parts of the world, people have a clever method for trapping monkeys. They take a gourd or a jar with a narrow neck and place some peanuts inside. A monkey, smelling the delicious nuts, will come along and easily slide its slender hand into the jar. It will then grasp a big fistful of peanuts, but now, its fist has become too large to pass back through the narrow opening. The monkey is trapped. It will pull and struggle, screeching in rage and frustration, but it cannot get free. All it has to do to escape is to simply open its hand, release the peanuts, and its hand will slide out with ease. But its desire, its grasping, is so strong that it will not let go. It will remain a prisoner, trapped by its own clenched fist. We are all this monkey. The peanuts are all the things we cling to so desperately. Our desires, our expectations, our opinions, our grievances, our very identity. We suffer because we refuse to open our hand. Letting go is the simple, liberating act of unclenching our fist and realizing that our freedom was there all along. As we practice this art, a great unburdening occurs. Life becomes lighter, more fluid, and more spacious. When we are no longer weighed down by the heavy baggage of the past, the future, our expectations, and our rigid ideas, our inner world naturally becomes less cluttered, less chaotic, and more serene. This inner clearing creates a natural resonance with simplicity in our outer world. When we no longer feel the desperate need to acquire possessions, status, or experiences to prop up a fragile ego, we begin to discover the profound elegance and deep satisfaction of a simpler way of life. As we learn the gentle art of letting go, unclenching our fists from the past, the future, and our rigid expectations, a natural sense of spaciousness begins to dawn in our inner world. We are no longer burdened by the heavy mental baggage we once carried. This inner simplicity, this newfound lightness of being, naturally inspires us to look at our outer world and question the complexity and clutter we have accumulated there. This leads us to the profound and peaceful practice of living simply. In our modern world, we are conditioned from birth to believe a single, pervasive myth that happiness is something to be bought. We are told that more is always better, that our sense of self-worth is tied to what we own, and that the emptiness we sometimes feel can be filled by the next purchase. This relentless pursuit of material things is, from a spiritual perspective, like trying to quench your thirst by drinking salt water. The more you drink, the thirstier you become. The satisfaction from a new possession is fleeting, and very soon, the mind's craving begins again, seeking the next thing, the next hit of novelty, convinced that this time, it will bring lasting fulfillment. It is a treadmill of desire that has no end, and it is a primary source of our anxiety, our debt, and our disconnection from what truly matters. Living simply, from a Buddhist point of view, is not about a particular aesthetic of empty rooms or owning less than a certain number of items. It is not about self-deprivation or rejecting the material world. It is about a radical decluttering of the mind. It is the conscious and joyful practice of differentiating between our genuine needs and our conditioned wants. Our true needs are relatively simple: food to nourish our bodies, shelter to keep us safe, clothing to keep us warm, and most importantly, love, connection, and a sense of purpose to nourish our hearts. Our wants, on the other hand, are endless. They are manufactured by a culture of advertising that is designed to make us feel inadequate. They are fueled by the social pressure to keep up with the Joneses, and they are driven by the ego's insatiable hunger for status and validation. The practice of mindfulness is the essential tool that allows us to see this process clearly. When a desire for a new object arises, mindfulness allows us to pause and ask, is this a true need, or is this a want? Where is this desire coming from? Am I trying to fill an emotional void with a physical thing? In this mindful pause, we find the freedom to choose, rather than being driven by unconscious habit. The benefits of embracing a simpler life are vast and life-altering. The most immediate is a reduction in financial stress. When we consciously choose to need less, we are freed from the pressure of having to earn more and more just to support a lifestyle of constant acquisition. This financial freedom translates directly into freedom of time and energy. Think of all the hours spent working to pay for things we don't truly need, all the time spent shopping, managing, cleaning, and worrying about our possessions. When we simplify, this time and energy is liberated, and we can invest it in the things that provide genuine, lasting nourishment: our relationships with loved ones, our physical and mental health, our hobbies and creative passions, our spiritual growth, and our ability to contribute to the well-being of our community. Furthermore, living simply is a profound act of compassion for our planet. The engine of overconsumption is depleting our world's resources and creating environmental crises. By choosing to consume less, we reduce our footprint and become responsible stewards of our shared home. The journey into a simpler life is not about making a dramatic overnight purge. It is a gradual process of shifting your mindset and your habits. You can start small. Choose one closet, one drawer, or one corner of a room and mindfully declutter it. Let go of anything you no longer use, need, or love. Experience the feeling of lightness and clarity that comes from creating physical space. Another powerful practice is to create a mindful pause before every purchase. You might even have a rule to wait 24 hours or even a week before buying any non-essential item. During this waiting period, ask yourself the tough questions. Do I really need this? Why do I want it? Will it add genuine value to my life? More often than not, you will find the initial impulse has faded, and you have saved yourself not only money, but the burden of another possession. The most powerful practice of all, however, is the cultivation of gratitude. The desire for more comes from a feeling of lack. Gratitude is the direct antidote. Take time each day to consciously appreciate what you already have: your health, the people you love, the food you eat, the simple beauty of the world around you. A heart full of gratitude has no room for the gnawing hunger of want. There is a powerful story from ancient Greece that perfectly captures the spirit of this wisdom. The philosopher Diogenes was a man who practiced radical simplicity, choosing to live in a large clay jar in the marketplace of Athens. His fame reached the ears of Alexander the Great, the most powerful man in the known world. Alexander, intrigued, went to visit this strange philosopher. He found Diogenes relaxing in his jar, enjoying the morning sun. Alexander, surrounded by his retinue of generals and courtiers, stood before him and announced, "I am Alexander the Great." Diogenes calmly replied, "I am Diogenes the dog." Alexander, amused, said, "Ask of me any boon you desire, anything you want. It is yours." He was offering this man who had nothing, everything, limitless wealth, power, and status. Diogenes simply looked up at the emperor, who was casting a shadow over him, and said, "Stand aside. You are blocking my sunlight." In that moment, who was the richer man? The man who had conquered the world but still wanted more, or the man who had nothing but needed nothing, not even from the most powerful man on earth? The story teaches us that true wealth is not in having much, but in needing little. True freedom is an internal state, independent of external possessions. As we begin to simplify our external lives, removing the clutter and the noise of constant acquisition, we create a profound sense of outer peace. This external quiet allows us to become more sensitive to the more subtle aspects of our being. With fewer distractions, we can more clearly see and hear the impact of our own actions and our own words. When the frantic energy of wanting subsides, we have the space to focus on cultivating skillfulness in our interactions with the world. This naturally leads us to explore the power and the responsibility of our communication. We begin to investigate the art of speaking in a way that is truthful, kind, and beneficial. This is the next step on our path, the practice of right speech. As the clutter of our outer lives begins to quiet down through the practice of simple living, we create the precious space needed to observe the more subtle energies we put out into the world. Of these, none is more powerful, more constant, or more capable of creating either harmony or havoc than the energy of our speech. Our words are not just empty sounds, they are creative forces. With our words, we can build bridges of connection or walls of separation. We can offer a balm that heals a wounded heart, or we can wield a weapon that inflicts a wound. Recognizing this immense power is the first step toward cultivating the next factor on our path, the profound and essential practice of samavaka, or right speech. Right speech is not about censorship or having a perpetually soft voice. It is the art of using our communication consciously, wisely, and compassionately as a tool for awakening and for the benefit of all. The classic teachings outline 4 beautiful guidelines for practicing right speech. The first is to speak the truth and to abstain from falsehood. This goes deeper than simply not telling lies. It means speaking with authenticity and sincerity. It means avoiding exaggeration that paints a false picture, refraining from making promises we cannot keep, and being honest with ourselves about our own motivations. A commitment to truthfulness builds a foundation of trust in all of our relationships, both with others and with ourselves. When people know our word is reliable, connection becomes deep and effortless. The second guideline is to abstain from divisive speech. This is the practice of not using our words to set one person against another. It is the conscious choice to refrain from slander, from spreading rumors, and from engaging in malicious gossip. In our modern world of social media, where rumors can spread like wildfire and reputations can be destroyed with a few keystrokes, this practice is more vital than ever. Divisive speech is born from a mind that thrives on drama and conflict. Right speech, in contrast, seeks to foster harmony. It means that when we speak about others, especially those not present, we do so with the same care and respect we would wish for ourselves. It is the practice of protecting the good name of others and looking for opportunities to heal rifts, not create them. The third guideline is to abstain from harsh speech. This includes any form of verbal aggression, shouting, cursing, insults, ridicule, and sarcasm intended to wound. Harsh speech is almost always a manifestation of our own anger and pain. It is the hot coal of our own suffering that we desperately try to toss to someone else. The practice of right speech invites us to cultivate a language of gentleness and kindness, even when we are discussing difficult topics or expressing disagreement. It is possible to be firm and clear without being cruel. It is possible to express a boundary without building a wall of aggression. This requires mindfulness, pausing before we speak when we are emotionally triggered, and choosing words that are intended to clarify and connect, rather than to dominate and wound. The fourth and final guideline is to abstain from idle chatter. This is not a commandment to be silent all the time. It is an invitation to value both our words and our silence. Idle chatter is communication that serves no real purpose. It is the mindless talk that fills space but adds no value, the endless commentary on trivialities that just adds to the noise of the world. By refraining from useless chatter, we begin to appreciate the power of meaningful conversation. Our words become more potent and more considered, and we also begin to discover the profound beauty of what is known as noble silence. This is not the tense, awkward silence of anger or discomfort. Noble silence is a conscious, peaceful, and generative space. It is the silence we keep when we know that speaking would only cause more harm. It is the silence of deep listening, where we offer our full presence to another. And it is the inner silence we cultivate in meditation, which allows us to hear the deeper truths of our own heart. To help us navigate the complexities of daily conversation, we can use a simple, practical filter, a set of 4 questions to ask ourselves before we speak. The first is it true? If it is not true, we should not say it. The second is it kind? If it is true, but not kind, perhaps it is better left unsaid, or its delivery needs to be softened with great care. The third is it necessary? There are many things that are both true and kind, but simply do not need to be said. They are superfluous. The final and most subtle question is this the right time? A difficult truth spoken at the wrong moment can be deeply unskillful and cause unnecessary pain. A wise person knows not only what to say, but when to say it. The practice of right speech is not just about what comes out of our mouths, it is also about what we take in with our ears. The art of deep listening is a fundamental, yet often overlooked, aspect of skillful communication. Most of the time, we do not listen to understand. We listen to reply. We are busy formulating our own argument, our own story, our own advice, while the other person is still speaking. Deep listening, born from compassion, is the practice of offering someone the incredible gift of our full, non-judgmental attention. We listen not just to their words, but to the feelings and the suffering that may lie beneath them. In offering this silent, compassionate presence, we create a safe space in which the other person can heal themselves. Often, this is the most helpful thing we can possibly do. There is a powerful story that demonstrates the supreme wisdom of right speech. A man, hearing of the Buddha's teachings, became enraged, believing them to be foolish. He went to find the Buddha, and standing before him, unleashed a torrent of insults and abuse. The Buddha listened patiently and silently until the man had exhausted himself. When he was finished, the Buddha asked him a simple question. "My friend," he said, "if you purchase a gift for someone, and you go to their house to give it to them, but they do not accept your gift, to whom does the gift then belong?" The man, surprised by the question, replied, "Well, it would belong to me, of course." The Buddha smiled gently and said, "Exactly, and so it is with your anger. You have come here, and offered me this gift of insults and abuse. I have chosen not to accept it. It therefore remains with you. This story teaches us that we are not obligated to accept the verbal poison of others. We have the power to remain in our own center, calm and unstained. Our peace is ours to keep. As we practice speaking and listening with more mindfulness, we realize that our words are just the tip of the iceberg. They arise from our deeper thoughts, intentions, and patterns of behavior. To truly cultivate a life of harmlessness and benefit, our commitment cannot stop with our speech. It must extend to our physical actions as well. The same principles of kindness, truthfulness, and responsibility that guide our words must also guide our deeds. This leads us naturally to the next step on our path, the practice of right action. Having cultivated a deep awareness of the power of our words, we now turn our attention to the physical expressions of our will, our deeds. Our actions are the chisels that sculpt the reality of our lives and the world around us. While our words can create ripples, our actions create waves, sending consequences out into the world that can affect countless beings, for better or for worse. The practice of living wisely and compassionately must therefore extend into the very way we move through the world, the choices we make, and the deeds we perform. This is the domain of the next step on our path, Samakamanta, or right action. Right action is the commitment to embody our spiritual values, to translate our inner aspirations for peace and kindness into tangible, physical acts of harmlessness and benefit. The traditional framework for right action is outlined in 3 fundamental precepts, which serve as clear and practical guidelines for ethical living. The first is to abstain from taking life. At its most basic level, this is a commitment to non-violence, a vow not to intentionally kill any living creature, from the smallest insect to another human being. But its spirit extends far beyond this. It is the cultivation of a profound reverence for all of life, in all its forms. In a modern context, this means actively protecting our environment, recognizing that our planet is a living, breathing system upon which all life depends. It means making conscious choices as consumers to minimize our support for industries that cause harm. On a personal level, it means abstaining from physical violence in all its forms and recognizing that even our aggressive gestures or our road rage are small acts of violence that poison the atmosphere around us. It is the practice of becoming a protector of life, not its destroyer. The second precept of right action is to abstain from taking what is not given. In other words, to refrain from stealing. Again, the deeper meaning goes far beyond simple theft. It is about cultivating a deep respect for the property and efforts of others. This means being honest in all of our business and financial dealings. It means not taking credit for the work or ideas of others. In our busy lives, it can even mean respecting other people's time by being punctual and not taking their attention for granted. At its heart, this precept is an antidote to the mind of greed and lack. When we steal, we are acting from the belief that we do not have enough, that we must take from others to satisfy ourselves. The practice of not stealing and its positive counterpart, the practice of generosity, cultivates a mind of abundance and trust. It is the understanding that true wealth lies not in what we can acquire, but in what we can freely give. The third precept is to abstain from sexual misconduct. This guideline invites us to bring awareness, responsibility, and kindness into our intimate lives. It is a commitment to not cause harm to ourselves or others through the powerful energy of sexuality. This means honoring the commitments and vows we have made, whether in a marriage or a partnership, and being faithful to the person with whom we have chosen to share our lives. It means respecting the bodies, hearts, and boundaries of others, ensuring that all intimate connection is based on mutual consent, honesty, and care. It is about avoiding any sexual act that is exploitative, coercive, or that would cause emotional devastation to another person, their partner, or their family. In essence, this precept guides us to cultivate a sexuality that is rooted in love, respect, and connection, rather than in selfish gratification or the causing of harm. Underpinning all of these ethical guidelines is the universal and impersonal law of cause and effect, known in Buddhism as kamma or karma. Karma is not a system of divine reward and punishment handed down by an external judge. It is a natural law, as impersonal and reliable as the law of gravity. The principle is simple. Every intentional action is like a seed that is planted in the field of our consciousness. Actions motivated by greed, hatred, and delusion are unwholesome seeds, like thorns or poison ivy. When they ripen, they will inevitably bear the fruit of suffering, for ourselves and for others. Actions motivated by generosity, kindness, and wisdom are wholesome seeds, like the seeds of a mango tree or a beautiful flower. When they ripen, they will inevitably bear the fruit of happiness and peace. We are the farmers of our own lives. We cannot plant thistles and expect to harvest strawberries. Karma is not about fate or destiny. It is about radical responsibility. It means that while we cannot always control what happens to us, we have complete control over how we respond. Our present moment actions are the seeds we are planting for our future happiness. This understanding empowers us to become the conscious creators of our lives. A beautiful story tells of a hunter who made his living by killing animals in the forest. One day, he heard the teachings of the Buddha on compassion and the law of karma, and his heart was deeply moved. He decided he could no longer continue his violent profession. He threw down his bow and arrows and returned to the village, determined to change his life. At first, his life was incredibly difficult. He had no other skills, and his family fell into poverty. The other villagers, knowing his past, distrusted him. Yet, he persisted. He took on the most menial jobs, always acting with honesty and diligence. He was kind to his neighbors and shared what little he had. Slowly, over many years, the seeds of his new, wholesome actions began to sprout. People began to see his integrity and his gentle nature. They offered him better work. He built a new life, one of peace and respect, and his heart was filled with a joy he had never known as a hunter. This story teaches us that our past karma does not define our destiny. We always have the power, in this present moment, to plant new seeds, to change the course of our lives from one of harm to one of healing. The key to planting these wholesome seeds is mindfulness. Before we act, we can take a precious moment to pause and examine our intention. We can ask ourselves, what is the motivation for this action I am about to take? Is it coming from a place of wanting something for myself, a place of anger, or a place of confusion? Or is it coming from a place of kindness, a desire to help, a moment of clarity? This mindful pause is our point of power. It is where we shift from being a creature of blind habit to a being of conscious choice. As we strive to integrate right speech and right action into our daily lives, a practical question arises. It is very difficult to maintain these ethical standards if the very way we spend 8 hours a day earning a living is in direct contradiction to them. To live a life of true integrity, our work itself must be an expression of our values. This brings us to the next crucial element of the path, the challenge and the joy of finding samma ajiva, or right livelihood. Having established a foundation of ethical conduct through right speech and right action, we now arrive at a very practical and significant area of our lives, our work. For most of us, our livelihood consumes the largest portion of our waking hours. It is the primary way we structure our days, interact with society, and provide for ourselves and our families. It is therefore impossible to live a truly integrated life of integrity if our professional life is a space of harm, conflict, or meaninglessness. The spiritual path is not something we practice for an hour in the morning before commuting to a job that contradicts our deepest values. The path is a way of life. This brings us to the next vital component of our journey, sama ajiva, or right livelihood. Right livelihood is the principle of earning a living in a way that is honorable, ethical, and does not cause harm to ourselves or to others. The Buddha laid out a very clear, traditional definition of livelihoods to be avoided. These were trades that directly profit from the suffering of others. They included dealing in weapons, which facilitate violence and death. They included dealing in living beings, which includes the slave trade, prostitution, and raising animals for slaughter. They included the meat industry, as it is based on the taking of life. They included the production and sale of intoxicants, which cloud the mind and lead to heedlessness. And finally, they included the trade in poisons, substances designed purely to cause harm. While these ancient guidelines may seem specific, their underlying spirit is timeless and universal. It is a call to examine the consequences of our work. Does our job, directly or indirectly, contribute to violence, exploitation, confusion, or suffering in the world? In our complex modern economy, navigating this can be challenging, but the principle remains a powerful compass. Right livelihood asks us to aspire to a profession that is, at the very least, neutral in its impact, and at its best, positively beneficial. It is about seeking a fundamental harmony between our need to earn a living and our deep human need to live a meaningful life. When our work is in alignment with our values, it ceases to be a dreary obligation or a source of inner conflict. Instead, it becomes a vibrant and valid part of our spiritual practice, a vehicle through which we can express our creativity, our skill, and our compassion. The stress and cognitive dissonance that come from spending your days doing something you know is harmful or meaningless is a profound and often overlooked source of suffering. Of course, the reality for many of us is that we cannot simply quit our jobs tomorrow and find our dream profession. We have bills to pay and families to support. The beauty of this path, however, is that it always meets us right where we are. The practice of right livelihood does not necessarily demand that you change what you do. It first invites you to change how you do it. You can begin to practice right livelihood in any job, right now, by transforming your attitude and your conduct at work. You can commit to bringing mindfulness to your tasks, doing your work with diligence, focus, and care, rather than just going through the motions. You can practice right speech in the workplace by refusing to participate in harmful gossip, by communicating with colleagues respectfully, and by speaking truthfully in meetings. You can practice right action by being honest in your dealings, by not cutting corners, and by treating everyone, from your boss to the cleaning staff, with kindness and dignity. By infusing your current job with these qualities of mindfulness and integrity, you can transform even a difficult or mundane work environment into a field for practice. There is a wonderful, classic story about 3 stonecutters who were working on a construction site. A traveler came by and asked the first stonecutter, "What are you doing?" The man, looking tired and miserable, grumbled back, "What does it look like? I'm cutting this stupid, heavy stone. My back aches, the sun is hot, and the pay is terrible." The traveler moved on to the second stonecutter and asked the same question. This man was working diligently and replied in a matter-of-fact tone, "I'm a stonecutter. I'm building a wall. It's a solid wall, and I take pride in making my cuts straight and true." Finally, the traveler approached the third stonecutter. This man was also working hard, but there was a light in his eyes and a smile on his face. When asked what he was doing, he looked up from his work, gestured towards the sky, and said with a voice full of pride and joy, "I am building a cathedral." All 3 men were doing the exact same physical task, but their experience of their work was worlds apart. The first man saw only his suffering and his toil. The second man saw his craft and his function, but the third man had connected his daily labor to a vast and inspiring purpose. He understood his work not as a transaction, but as a contribution. He saw himself as part of something much larger and more beautiful than himself. This story teaches us that the meaning of our work is not inherent in the task itself, but in the vision and intention we bring to it. We can choose to see our work as simply cutting stone, or we can choose to see it as building a cathedral. This shift in perspective is the heart of right livelihood. It is the practice of looking for the cathedral in whatever we do. If you are a teacher, you are not just teaching subjects, you are shaping the future. If you are a cook, you are not just making food, you are offering nourishment and pleasure. If you are a cleaner, you are not just mopping floors, you are creating a space of health and order for others to enjoy. Every form of ethical work can be seen as a path of service, a way to offer our unique skills for the benefit of the wider community. When we begin to align our daily work with our deepest values, our life starts to feel whole and integrated. The division between our work self and our real self begins to dissolve. We bring our best qualities to our work, and in turn, our work becomes a source of genuine satisfaction and purpose. However, to live out these ethical commitments, whether in our speech, our actions, or our work, requires more than just good intentions. It requires a steady and continuous application of energy. We need the will to start on this path, the persistence to continue when it is difficult, and the wisdom to know how to apply our energy skillfully without burning out or giving up. This wise and balanced application of our will is the next great power we must cultivate. It is the practice of right effort. Having aligned our speech, our actions, and even our livelihood with the principles of harmlessness and benefit, we have laid a strong ethical foundation for our lives. But anyone who has tried to maintain a new habit or hold to a noble resolution knows that good intentions alone are not enough. Life is filled with challenges. Our old habits are deeply ingrained, and the currents of distraction and temptation are strong. To stay on course, we need more than a map. We need a well-maintained engine. We need a source of sustained, skillful, and resilient energy. This brings us to the next factor of the path, a practice that powers the entire journey, samavayama, or right effort. The term effort can sometimes conjure images of stressful, joyless striving, of gritting our teeth and forcing our way towards a goal. But right effort is something entirely different. It is not a tense, white-knuckled struggle, but a steady, joyful, and intelligent application of our will. It is the balanced and persistent energy that we bring to the cultivation of our own minds. The Buddha described this practice as a form of wise gardening, broken down into 4 distinct yet interconnected activities. The first of these is the effort to prevent unwholesome states from arising. This is the effort of guarding the senses, like a wise gardener putting a fence around their vegetable patch to keep out pests. We know that certain sights, sounds, or situations tend to trigger unwholesome states like greed, anger, or despair within us. The effort of prevention means being mindful of our consumption. It might mean choosing not to endlessly scroll through social media feeds that we know will stir up envy. It might mean avoiding violent movies if we know they agitate our minds. It is not about hiding from the world, but about making wise choices about what we expose ourselves to, creating an environment where peace has a chance to grow. The second is the effort to abandon unwholesome states that have already arisen. Despite our best efforts to guard the senses, the seeds of negative emotions are already present within us, and they will inevitably sprout. When a thought of anger, jealousy, or obsessive desire appears in the mind, we don't just let it grow wild and take over the garden. This is the effort of mindful weeding. We notice the unwholesome thought has arrived, and we skillfully abandon it. We can do this by applying an antidote, such as cultivating a thought of loving kindness when anger is present, or by simply letting the thought go, seeing it as an impersonal event, and returning our attention to our breath. We refuse to water the weeds with our attention. The third aspect is the joyful effort to arouse wholesome states that have not yet arisen. This is the active and intentional planting of good seeds. We know that qualities like kindness, compassion, generosity, and gratitude do not always arise on their own. This effort means we consciously make time and space for them. We set aside time for a formal loving-kindness meditation. We actively look for things to be grateful for throughout our day. We read inspiring texts or listen to teachings that uplift our hearts. We are not passively waiting for goodness to happen. We are actively inviting it into our lives and creating the causes and conditions for it to flourish. The fourth and final aspect is the effort to maintain and develop wholesome states that have already arisen. When a good seed has sprouted, our work is not done. We must continue to nurture it. This is the effort of watering and tending to the young plants in our garden. When a feeling of peace, joy, or generosity arises, we give it our attention. We savor it. We investigate it to understand what caused it to arise, so we can replicate those conditions in the future. We don't take these precious states for granted. We recognize them as the fruits of our practice, and we encourage them to grow stronger, more stable, and more deeply rooted in our character. The key to all four of these efforts is the word right. This implies a sense of balance, of walking the middle way. The path of awakening is not a sprint. It is a marathon, and trying to force progress through sheer, aggressive willpower almost always leads to burnout and frustration. This is beautifully illustrated in the story of a monk named Sona. Sona had been a wealthy and delicate musician before joining the monastic order, and he decided to practice with extreme, ferocious effort. He practiced walking meditation until the soles of his feet were cracked and bleeding, yet his mind was no closer to peace. He became discouraged and thought of giving up, believing he was not suited for this path. The Buddha, knowing his thoughts, came to him and asked a simple question. "Sona," he said, "before you became a monk, you were a skilled musician, were you not? Tell me, if the string of your lute was strung too tightly, would it produce a beautiful sound?" "No, Lord," Sona replied. "It would be sharp, and it would likely snap. And if the string was too loose," the Buddha continued, "would it produce a beautiful sound?" "No, Lord," said Sona. "It would make a dull thud, or no sound at all." The Buddha then delivered the crucial teaching. It is the same, Sona, with the practice of this path. If your effort is too strained and tight, it will only lead to restlessness and agitation. If your effort is too slack and lazy, it will lead to dullness and no progress will be made. You must tune your effort like you once tuned your lute, not too tight and not too loose, finding the perfect balance that produces the beautiful music of peace. This story teaches us that right effort is an art. It requires wisdom and self-compassion. We need the wisdom to know when we need to apply more energy, and the compassion to know when we need to rest and be gentle with ourselves. As we practice, something wonderful begins to happen. The effort itself becomes a source of joy. When we see the tangible results in our lives, when we notice that we are a little less reactive, a little more peaceful, a little kinder to ourselves and others, the motivation to practice is no longer a chore. It becomes a natural and joyful expression of our desire for freedom. It is like someone who begins an exercise program. At first it is difficult, but as they start to feel healthier, stronger, and more energetic, they begin to look forward to the activity itself. This balanced, joyful, and persistent application of energy has a profound effect on the mind. The mental energy that was once scattered by endless distractions, dissipated through skillful outbursts, or wasted in internal conflict, is now gathered, unified, and directed. The mind becomes less like a flickering candle in the wind, and more like a steady, powerful, and focused beam of light. This state of a calm, collected, and unified mind, born from the practice of right effort, is the next great milestone on our path. It is the state of Samma Samadhi, or right concentration. Through the steady and balanced practice of right effort, we begin to gather the scattered fragments of our attention. The mental energy that was once dissipated in worry, lost in distraction, or consumed by inner conflict, is now mindfully collected, nurtured, and channeled. This unification of the mind, this process of gathering our awareness into a single, cohesive force, leads us to the eighth and final factor of this section of the path, the profound state of samma samadhi, or right concentration. If right effort is the act of tuning the instrument, right concentration is the beautiful, resonant, and clear note that it produces. Samadhi is often translated as concentration, but it is a state far deeper and more powerful than our ordinary, everyday focus. Our usual state of mind is one of fragmentation, what is often called monkey mind. Our attention leaps restlessly from thought to thought, from sensation to sensation, from a memory of the past to an anxiety about the future, never settling anywhere for long. Right concentration is the direct antidote to this chaotic inner state. It is the ability to place the mind upon a single chosen object, such as the sensation of the breath, and to keep it there with unwavering stability and continuity. It is the taming of the monkey mind, a state where the mind becomes calm, clear, and joyfully obedient. It is important to distinguish right concentration from the kind of absorption we might experience while watching an exciting movie or playing an engaging video game. In those states, our attention is certainly focused, but it is often a passive and hypnotic focus. We are sucked in by the object, and our sense of self-awareness can diminish. Right concentration, as part of the Noble Eightfold Path, is different because it is always coupled with mindfulness. We are not just on the object of meditation, we are also consciously aware that we are on it. There is a clarity and a brightness to the attention, not a dull or mesmerized state. It is a deliberate and masterful placing of the mind, not an accidental capture of it. This powerful state of mental collectedness is the natural fruit of consistent meditation practice. As we sit and repeatedly practice bringing our wandering attention back to the breath, gently and patiently, 100 times, 1,000 times, the mind gradually learns to settle, just as a wild horse, when treated with patience and skill, eventually learns to stand calmly. So too does the mind learn to abide peacefully with its object. As the concentration deepens, the common obstacles to peace, known as the 5 hindrances, begin to fade away. The hindrance of sensual desire, the mind's constant seeking of pleasure, subsides. The hindrance of ill will, the mind of anger and aversion, is pacified. The hindrances of sloth and torpor, or mental dullness and sleepiness, are overcome. The hindrance of restlessness and worry is calmed. And finally, the hindrance of skeptical doubt, the questioning of the path and our ability to walk it, is temporarily suspended. When these hindrances recede, the mind enters into states of profound peace and bliss known as the jhanas, or meditative absorptions. These are natural states of consciousness, characterized by powerful feelings of joy, rapture, and deep tranquility. They are not mystical or supernatural, but rather the mind's natural resting state when it is freed from its usual agitation and impurities. These states are like a deep inner spa for the mind. They provide profound rest and rejuvenation, washing away layers of accumulated stress and healing the nervous system. Emerging from a state of deep concentration, the mind feels refreshed, powerful, pliable, and incredibly clear. But as blissful and wonderful as these states are, they are not the ultimate goal of the path. Their primary purpose is to prepare the mind for its most important work, the work of insight. Right concentration is what forges the mind into a perfect instrument for investigation. Imagine your mind is like a lake. A normal, distracted mind is like a lake on a windy day, its surface choppy and agitated. If you look into this lake, any reflection you see will be broken, distorted, and unclear. You cannot see the bottom, and you cannot see a clear image of the sky above. This is why a scattered mind cannot see reality clearly. But when the wind of thought dies down through the practice of concentration, the lake's surface becomes perfectly still, calm, and glassy. Now, the reflection is perfect. You can see every detail of the trees and clouds above, and you can see right down to the very bottom of the lake. This still, clear lake is the mind of samadhi. Another powerful analogy is that of a light source. The ordinary, distracted mind is like a common light bulb. Its light is diffuse, scattered in all directions. It can illuminate a room, but its power is weak and unfocused. The concentrated mind, however, is like a laser beam. All of the energy of the light is gathered into a single, coherent, and incredibly powerful point. A laser beam can cut through steel. In the same way, a mind sharpened by right concentration has the power to cut through the layers of illusion and ignorance that obscure the true nature of reality. It can penetrate the surface of things and see them as they truly are. This is the ultimate purpose of samadhi. We calm the mind, not just for the sake of peace, but for the sake of wisdom. The two are inseparable. They are often described as the two wings of a bird. Both are needed to fly. Concentration is the wing of calm, samatha, and wisdom is the wing of insight, vipassana. We have now spent much time developing the wing of calm. Through our practice of ethics, effort, and concentration, we have forged our minds into a powerful, precise, and well-honed instrument. Now, we must pick up this instrument and use it. We must turn this clear, focused, and steady mind towards the ultimate questions of existence. We are now ready to cultivate the wing of wisdom, beginning with the very foundation of all understanding, the first and most important factor of the entire path, samadhi, or right view. We have now journeyed through the foundational pillars of ethical living and the profound practices of mental cultivation. Through right effort, we have gathered our energy, and through right concentration, we have forged that energy into a mind that is calm, unified, and powerful, like a perfectly still lake or a focused beam of light. The instrument is now prepared. The question that remains is, at what shall we aim this powerful tool? This is where we enter the third and culminating division of the path, the division of wisdom, or panna. And the very first factor of wisdom, the one that guides and illuminates the entire journey, is samadhi, or right view. If the Noble Eightfold Path is a vehicle for liberation, right view is its steering wheel and its headlights. Without it, no matter how powerful our engine of effort and concentration may be, we will inevitably veer off the road and become lost in the dark. It is our conceptual map, our guiding compass, that ensures our journey leads to its intended destination, the end of suffering. So, what is this right view? It is not a rigid set of dogmas that one must accept with blind faith. Rather, it is seeing the world, ourselves, and the nature of existence in a way that aligns with reality as it truly is, free from the distortions of our hopes, our fears, and our conditioned ignorance. It is a perspective that is rooted in wisdom, not in delusion. There are generally understood to be two levels of right view. The first is what we might call mundane or conventional right view. This is the essential foundation for an ethical and happy life. It is the basic understanding of the law of karma, the recognition that our actions have consequences. It is the view that actions motivated by generosity, kindness, and honesty lead to happiness and favorable outcomes, while actions motivated by greed, hatred, and cruelty lead to suffering and unfavorable outcomes. This view provides the moral and philosophical underpinning for the practices of right speech, right action, and right livelihood we have already explored. It is the basic acceptance that our choices matter. While this conventional understanding is crucial, the path leads us towards a much deeper, more transformative perspective, known as supramundane or ultimate right view. This is not just a concept to be believed, but a truth to be directly realized within one's own experience. This ultimate right view is the profound experiential understanding of the core teachings of the Buddha. It is the clear comprehension of the Four Noble Truths, the diagnosis of suffering, its cause, its cessation, and the path leading to its cessation. And most profoundly, it is the direct, unshakable insight into what are called the three marks of existence, the three universal characteristics of all conditioned phenomena. These are the truths we have already begun to touch upon. Anicca, the truth of impermanence, that all things are in a constant state of flux. Dukkha, the truth of unsatisfactoriness, that relying on impermanent things for lasting happiness is inherently stressful. And anatta, the truth of not self, the realization that there is no fixed, solid, independent I at the center of our experience. To possess ultimate right view is to see these truths not as a philosophy, but as the very texture of every moment. It is absolutely vital to understand that right view is not a belief system. The Buddha was not interested in followers who simply believed what he said. The entire path is an invitation for personal investigation and verification. The spirit of the teaching is captured in the Pali phrase ehi passiko, which means come and see for yourself. The teachings are not presented as commandments to be obeyed, but as a hypothesis to be tested in the laboratory of your own life and your own mind. It is a path of seeing, not believing. This is beautifully illustrated by the ancient parable of the blind men and the elephant. A king brought several men who had been blind from birth to an elephant. He asked each one to touch a different part of the animal and describe it. The man who touched the leg said, "An elephant is like a great pillar." The one who touched the ear said, "No, it is like a large rough fan." The one who touched the tusk declared it was like a hard, smooth pipe. And the one who touched the tail insisted it was like a rope. Because each man was convinced that his own partial experience represented the whole truth, they began to argue and fight. Our ordinary, unenlightened views are like those of the blind men. We grasp one small part of reality, our own limited experience, and mistake it for the whole truth. Right view is the perspective of the sighted person who can step back and see the entire elephant, understanding how the leg, the ear, the tusk, and the tail all fit together to form a coherent whole. How then do we move from being one of the blind men to becoming the one with sight? The development of right view is a gradual training that involves three key activities working in harmony. The first is learning. We must, at the beginning, receive the map from a reliable source. This means listening to teachings from authentic masters or reading the scriptures to understand the concepts and the layout of the path. This gives us the theoretical framework. The second activity is reflection. We don't just passively accept what we have learned. We think about it deeply. We contemplate it. We question it. We see how it relates to our own lived experience. Does the teaching of impermanence make sense when I look at my own life? Can I see the law of karma at play in my own choices and their results? This process of intelligent reflection begins to internalize the map, making it our own. The third, and most crucial, activity is meditation. Learning and reflection provide the intellectual understanding, but it is through the direct, non-conceptual experience of meditation that this understanding ripens into true wisdom. Specifically, it is through the practice of insight meditation, or vipassana, that we develop ultimate right view. Using the calm, concentrated mind we have forged through samadhi, we turn our awareness inward and observe the moment-to-moment unfolding of our own reality. We watch the breath, we watch sensations, we watch emotions, we watch thoughts. And as we watch, without interfering, we begin to see for ourselves, not as a theory but as a direct experience, that everything is impermanent. We see that clinging to these fleeting phenomena causes stress. We see that there is no solid I behind the process, only the process itself. This is the come and see aspect of the path. We are no longer just looking at the map. We are walking the territory and verifying its features for ourselves. The blind men are beginning to see. Right view is placed as the first factor of the Eightfold Path for a reason. It is the vanguard, the scout that determines the direction of the entire army. If our view is clouded by ignorance, our efforts will be misdirected, our speech will be unskillful, and our actions will lead to more suffering. But when our view is clear, all the other path factors naturally begin to align with it. A correct understanding of reality becomes the catalyst for our transformation. However, a view, even a correct one, is still just an idea in the mind. For wisdom to become a living, breathing force in our lives, this clear seeing of the head must be united with the aspiring energy of the heart. Our understanding must inform and guide our motivation. This brings us to the second factor in the division of wisdom, the vital link between seeing and doing, sama sankappa, or right intention. With the clear light of right view illuminating our path, we have gained a correct map of the territory of existence. We understand the nature of suffering, its cause, its end, and the path leading to that end. But a map, no matter how accurate, is useless if it does not inspire and direct our movement. The clear seeing of the mind must be translated into the aspiring energy of the heart. This vital link, this bridge between our understanding and our actions, is the second factor of the wisdom division, sama sankappa, which can be translated as right intention, right resolve, or right thought. If right view is about the what of wisdom, right intention is about the why. It is the conscious and deliberate act of aiming our thoughts, our energy, and our will towards that which is wholesome, healing, and liberating. Every significant action we perform, whether of body or speech, is preceded by a thought, an intention. Thought is the seed from which our deeds and words grow. An unwholesome seed of anger will inevitably grow into a thorny plant of harsh words or harmful actions. A wholesome seed of kindness will blossom into a flower of gentle speech or a helpful deed. Right intention, therefore, is the practice of becoming a master gardener of our own minds, learning to skillfully cultivate the seeds of awakening and to gently weed out the seeds of suffering. The Buddha described 3 specific types of right intention that we should cultivate. The first is the intention of renunciation, or letting go. This is the direct opposite of intentions driven by craving and sensual desire. Having seen through right view that chasing after fleeting pleasures is an endless and unsatisfying game, we form the intention to turn away from this addiction. This is not a grim rejection of life's beauty, but a joyful unburdening. It is the resolve to find our happiness, not in what we can get from the world, but in the peace and freedom of a mind that needs very little. It is the intention to let go of our clinging to possessions, to status, to praise, and to pleasure, choosing instead the sublime contentment of a simple and liberated heart. Every time we consciously choose not to act on a greedy impulse, we are strengthening our intention of renunciation. The second is the intention of loving kindness, or goodwill. This is the direct opposite of intentions rooted in ill will, anger, and resentment. Having understood that anger is a poison that harms ourselves first and foremost, we make the firm resolve to meet all beings, without exception, with a heart of friendliness. This is the active cultivation of metta. It is the intention to put down the weapons of criticism and judgment, and to instead offer the gift of our warmth and our sincere wish for others to be happy. When we are cut off in traffic, and we choose to wish the other driver well instead of cursing them, we are practicing right intention. When we feel the sting of criticism, and choose to respond with understanding, rather than defensiveness, we are watering the seed of goodwill. The third is the intention of harmlessness, or compassion. This is the direct opposite of intentions rooted in cruelty, aggression, or violence. This is the active cultivation of karuna and avihimsa, a profound commitment not to cause harm to any living being, It is the resolve to be a gentle presence in the world. It stems from the empathetic understanding that all beings, just like us, wish to be free from pain and fear. The intention of harmlessness guides our actions, ensuring that we do not cause physical, emotional, or psychological harm through our deeds. When we choose a peaceful way to resolve a conflict, when we go out of our way to help someone in distress, or when we simply choose a lifestyle that minimizes our harmful impact on the planet, we are living out the intention of harmlessness. In the Buddhist understanding of karma, intention, or satana is the most important factor. An action's moral weight is determined more by the intention behind it than by the action itself. A person might donate a large sum of money to charity, an act that appears wholesome, but if their intention was purely to gain public recognition and to boost their own ego, the karmic fruit of that action will be weak and superficial. Another person might only be able to offer a single flower or a kind word, but if their intention was one of pure, selfless generosity, the karmic fruit of their action is immensely powerful and will lead to deep, lasting happiness. This is why cultivating our intention is so vital. It is the very heart of creating a positive and happy future for ourselves. We can think of our mind as a garden. If we leave it untended, weeds will naturally and effortlessly grow. The weeds of greed, anger, comparison, and fear do not require any cultivation. They arise on their own from the soil of our past habits. A wise gardener does not get angry at the weeds, but they also do not allow them to take over and choke out the life of the garden. The practice of right intention is the act of becoming that wise gardener. Through mindfulness, we learn to survey our inner landscape. We become aware of the thoughts that are constantly arising. We notice, there is a thought of jealousy, or there is a thought of impatience. This is the weeding process. We see the unwholesome thought clearly, and, by not giving it our energy, we allow it to wither. But a good gardener doesn't just pull weeds. They actively plant and nurture the flowers and vegetables they wish to grow. This is the active part of right intention. When we notice an unwholesome thought, we can skillfully replace it with its wholesome opposite. When a thought of stinginess arises, we can consciously bring to mind the joy of generosity. When a critical thought about someone appears, we can intentionally switch to thinking about one of their good qualities, or by sending them a thought of loving kindness. This is not suppression, it is a skillful substitution. We are consciously choosing which seeds to water in the garden of our mind. At first, this requires effort, but over time, as the wholesome plants grow stronger, they naturally begin to crowd out the weeds. Our mind becomes a place of beauty, fragrance, and nourishment, a place we enjoy spending time in. We have now journeyed through the great divisions of the path, the foundation of ethical conduct, the clarifying power of mental discipline, and the liberating sword of wisdom, comprising right view and right intention. We have explored the nature of suffering and the vast landscape of the human heart. We have been given a complete and coherent set of tools for transformation. The final question that remains is how to bring all of this together. How do we integrate these profound teachings into the messy, beautiful, and complicated reality of our daily lives? The goal is not to escape from this world, to find some faraway heaven. The ultimate challenge and the ultimate possibility is to realize freedom right here, to touch the peace of nirvana in the midst of the fires of our everyday existence. It is time now to see how this world of suffering and the state of ultimate peace are not two different places, but two different ways of seeing the same reality. Our journey together has been a long and deep one. We have walked the entirety of the Noble Eightfold Path, from the foundational ethics of how we act and speak, through the mental discipline that calms and focuses the mind, to the penetrating wisdom that sees reality as it truly is. We have gathered a complete set of tools for the transformation of our own hearts and minds. And now, we arrive at the final and most crucial understanding, the integration of this entire path into the fabric of our moment-to-moment existence. For what is the point of all this practice if it does not lead to a profound change in how we experience our ordinary lives? The ultimate goal is not to build a beautiful raft, only to stand on the shore and admire it. The goal is to use the raft to cross the turbulent waters from the shore of suffering to the shore of peace. There is a pervasive misunderstanding in the spiritual search, a belief that this world, with all its messiness, conflict, and pain, is a place to be escaped. This world is seen as samsara, the relentless, suffering-filled cycle of birth and death, while the goal, nirvana, is imagined as some faraway, blissful heaven, a perfect paradise to be attained only after we die, or after decades of secluded meditation in a cave. But the deepest wisdom of the path reveals something far more radical and immediate. It teaches that samsara and nirvana are not two different places. They are two different ways of seeing and experiencing the very same reality. Hell and heaven are not locations on a map. They are states of our own mind, available in any given moment. Let us look at samsara, the turning wheel of suffering, not as a cosmological theory, but as a psychological reality we experience every single day. When your mind is caught in a loop of anxious worry about the future, replaying potential disasters over and over, you are in samsara. When your heart is seized by anger and resentment over a past hurt, unable to let go of the story, you are in samsara. When you are driven by an insatiable craving for the next purchase, the next like on social media, the next fleeting pleasure, convinced it will finally make you happy, you are turning the wheel of samsara. Samsara is the state of a mind that is enslaved by its own conditioning, reacting blindly and habitually to the pains and pleasures of life, endlessly propelled by the fires of greed, hatred, and delusion. It is the experience of being a cork tossed about on the waves of circumstance, with no peace and no true freedom. What, then, is nirvana? The word itself means to extinguish or to unbind. What is extinguished are the very fires of greed, hatred, and delusion that power the wheel of samsara. What is unbound is the heart, freed from its enslavement to habitual reaction. Nirvana is not a place you go to. It is a quality of mind you can touch, right here and now. When you are faced with a difficult situation, and instead of reacting with blind anger, you are able to pause, breathe, and meet the moment with mindfulness and clarity. That moment contains the quality of nirvana. When you feel a strong desire arise, and instead of being compelled by it, you can simply watch it with spacious awareness until it passes. That is the freedom of nirvana. When you can look at the world, with all its beauty and all its pain, with a heart full of boundless love and unshakable equanimity, that is the peace of nirvana. It is the state of a mind that has found its true home, a peace that is not dependent on whether things are going our way or not. It is, as the ancient texts say, the unshakable liberation of the heart. The most profound symbol for this truth is the lotus flower. The lotus has its roots deep in the dark, smelly, murky mud at the bottom of a pond. This mud is samsara, the messy, difficult, and often painful conditions of our human lives. We all have to live in the mud of sickness, loss, disappointment, and conflict. There is no escaping it. But from this very mud, the lotus stalk rises up through the water, and when it reaches the surface, it opens into a blossom of breathtaking beauty and purity. The most remarkable thing about the lotus flower is that not a single drop of mud stains its pristine petals. It is nourished by the mud. It grows out of the mud, yet it remains completely untouched by it. We are this lotus. Our practice is not about trying to get rid of the mud. The mud is a necessary part of life, the very compost that nourishes our growth. The practice is to learn how to rise up through the difficult conditions of our lives and to allow our hearts and minds to blossom, unstained by the greed, hatred, and delusion that surround us. This means that every single moment of our lives, no matter how mundane or how challenging, becomes our field of practice. The monastery is no longer a building on a remote mountain. The monastery is right here. Your cushion is right here. When you are stuck in a traffic jam, you have a choice. You can tighten with anger and frustration, turning the wheel of samsara, or you can use that time to relax, to practice mindfulness of breath, to listen to a calming piece of music, touching the peace of nirvana. When you are criticized by a colleague at work, you can react with defensiveness and resentment, creating a battle. Or you can listen with an open mind, practice compassion for their possible suffering, and respond with wisdom, transforming the conflict into an opportunity for connection. When you experience a moment of great joy, you can cling to it, fearing its inevitable end. Or you can savor it fully, with a heart of gratitude and a wise understanding of its impermanent nature. The Eightfold Path ceases to be a list of abstract concepts and becomes our living guide. Right view is our constant reminder of the impermanent, unsatisfactory, and selfless nature of all things. Right intention steers our heart towards kindness in every interaction. Right speech guards our words. Right action guides our deeds. Right livelihood imbues our work with meaning. Right effort provides the gentle, persistent energy. Right mindfulness keeps us present and awake. And right concentration keeps our mind steady and clear amidst it all. Living in this way, we are no longer trying to get to nirvana. We are learning to live in a nirvanic way, moment by moment. The destination is the path itself. The freedom we seek is not in some distant future. It is in the quality of awareness we bring to this very breath, this very step, this very heartbeat. We have now traveled a great distance together, on a journey not across land or sea, but through the vast and intricate landscape of the human mind and heart. We began by standing face to face with the subtle, pervasive dissatisfaction that runs through so much of our modern lives. We acknowledged the reality of our own suffering, not as a sign of failure, but as the noble, first step toward true healing. From there, we began to gather our tools. We discovered the anchor of mindfulness, the simple, profound power of returning to the present moment. We learned to tend to the garden of our hearts, cultivating the boundless qualities of loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and the unshakable peace of equanimity. And we were given a map, the clear and practical guide of the Noble Eightfold Path, which showed us how to weave this wisdom into our speech, our actions, and our very way of life, transforming everything we do into a step on the path to awakening. We have seen that the ultimate goal is not to escape from this world, but to find freedom within it, to blossom like a lotus from the mud of our daily challenges, pure and unstained. As our journey together comes to a close, let the essence of these teachings distill into a few core truths. Remember, above all, that peace is not the absence of storms, but the ability of the heart to rest peacefully in the very center of the storm. The goal is not to create a life free from difficulty, for that is impossible. The goal is to cultivate an inner refuge, a state of mind so spacious and resilient that it can hold all of life's joys and sorrows without being broken. Remember also that everything you need to embark on this journey is already within you. These teachings, these words, are nothing more than a finger pointing at the moon. Do not mistake the finger for the moon itself. The purpose is not to worship the finger, but to look in the direction it is pointing, to see the luminous, peaceful moon of your own true nature with your own eyes. You are your own laboratory, your own refuge, your own greatest teacher. Let this not be the end, but the true beginning. The path is now open, and you are the traveler. You do not need to take a giant leap. You only need to take the next small step. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single breath. Perhaps your practice today will simply be to feel the sensation of one conscious inhalation and one conscious exhalation. Perhaps it will be to notice a moment of irritation and meet it with a flicker of patience. Perhaps it will be to offer a silent thought of kindness to yourself or to a stranger. This is how the path is walked, not in grand gestures, but in the small, repeated, and sincere efforts of each precious moment. You have the map, you have the tools, you have the capacity. The work is yours to do, and the peace that awaits is your own inherent birthright. May you walk on in safety, in wisdom, and in a peace that the world cannot give and cannot take away.